Chapter 3268. This alternate dimension was not big. It was only about 1,000 miles in radius. However, there were mountains and water, and the divine power of heaven and earth was abundant. There were no living creatures here. He was not afraid of being disturbed by anyone as he recuperated in seclusion. Ji Tianqing landed on a mountain peak. He found a place where divine power gathered and summoned the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda. He entered the distorted spacetime and returned to the blood flame sacred tree to recuperate in seclusion. This time, in the Green Jade Palace, he had been fighting for so long and had suffered terrible injuries. He had long been exhausted and his mind was haggard. If he did not recuperate for a few years, it would be difficult for him to return to his peak state. In order to heal his injuries and recover his divine power, he not only absorbed the power of the blood flame sacred tree, but also took out more than 3 billion divine pills, divine stones, and origin stones. Outside the divine pagoda, Chao Qingyu was also on the mountain peak. He kept a distance of 100 feet from the divine pagoda and sat cross-legged on a millstone. While he was guarding Ji Tianqing, he also let Lan out of the divine ring. Lan was still unconscious and lying quietly on the millstone. Chao Qingyu looked at Lan with a face full of self-blame. He quickly took out 2 king-level divine pills and fed them to her. Then, he personally channeled his energy into Lan's body to help her refine the medicinal power. The mountain peak was quiet. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. With Chao Qingyu's help, Lan absorbed the medicinal power of the 2 king-level divine pills and recovered 40% of her injuries. She regained her consciousness. However, she was still very weak. Chao Qingyu let her recuperate for 3 more days. She waited until her condition had recovered a little before she ended her cultivation. There was no one else on the mountain peak. Yi Liangchuan was like water. The couple had been separated for 10,000 years. Now that they were finally reunited, they had time to reminisce. Their eyes met and they stared at each other for a long time. Tears welled up in Lan's eyes, but her face was filled with a happy smile. 10,000 years have passed. Qingyu, you're finally back. During those 10,000 years, I was always in the dark. Do you know how lonely and desperate I was? Chao Qingyu's heart was filled with guilt. He quickly pulled her into his arms and said with a voice full of self-blame, Lan, it's all my fault. I've caused you so much pain and suffering. The couple hadn't seen each other for a long time. Their hearts had long been filled with strong emotions, and they had endless things to say. Now that they had opened their mouths, the two of them poured out their feelings of longing without stopping at all. Half a day, 1 day, 2 days, a full 4 days passed. Chao Qingyu and Lan were still hugging each other, whispering to each other. But at this moment, a divine light lit up at an untimely moment. Shua! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing flew out of the divine pagoda. Although only 22 days had passed in the outside world, he had already been recuperating in the distorted spacetime for 3 years. At this moment, he was no longer in such a sorry state as before. He had regained his usual vigor. His white robe with golden patterns on it was spotless. His long hair was tied up in a bun and draped behind his head. There wasn't a trace of injury on his body. His divine power was well hidden, and his eyes were as deep and vast as the sea of stars. Through these 3 years of seclusion, he had consumed billions of resources. Not only had his injuries healed, but his strength had also returned to peak condition. His strength had even increased. Ji Tianqing's sudden appearance broke the silence on the mountain peak. Chao Qingyu and Lan quickly stopped talking and turned to look at him. Seeing that Ji Tianqing's injuries had healed and his strength had completely recovered, the couple was shocked. Especially Lan, who couldn't help but exclaim. Oh my God! It hasn't even been a month. Young Master Tianqing, how did you recover so quickly? Your previous injuries were clearly more serious than mine. Chao Qingyu didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with excitement. After sizing up Ji Tianqing, his gaze landed on the black divine tower. He pondered for a while and vaguely guessed the answer. He said, with young Master Tianqing's previous injuries and condition, it's impossible for him to recover in a month. Even a divine king can't do it. If I'm not wrong, young Master Tianqing's divine tower is no ordinary item. It should have the effect of accelerating time, right? Time acceleration. This sort of thing was nothing new to divine king powerhouses. Chao Qingyu had wandered the divine world for 10,000 years. He had seen too many miraculous things and could be considered knowledgeable. Ji Tianqing didn't hide it and nodded in acknowledgement. Lan Er was enlightened and said, no wonder. Ji Tianqing came in front of the two and cupped his hands. He smiled and said, maybe I've appeared at the wrong time and disturbed you. You guys have experienced so many bumps and tribulations, only reuniting after 10,000 years. There must be a lot to talk about, right? Hearing these words, Lan Er was rather bashful, lowering her head, not daring to look at his expression. But Chao Qingyu did not feel awkward and waved his hand and said, no worries. Before you appeared, we've already caught up for 4 days. Since your injuries have already recovered, we can set our minds at ease too. Previously, you paid such a huge price in order to help and treat us. The two of us husband and wife discussed and decided to give a meager gift to express our thanks. As he said, Chao Qingyu was about to take out the thank you gift that he had prepared long ago from his interspatial ring. Even though he said it was a meager gift, he was a divine king expert. Only king-grade divine artifacts could be taken out. Originally, what Ji Tianqing needed the most right now was king-grade divine artifacts and materials. But he had other thoughts and waved his hand to stop Chao Qingyu. No need to give any thank you gift. I didn't help you guys for this. Chao Qingyu's movements froze and he said with a bitter smile, but you have to make us do something, pay a little something. Otherwise, we won't feel at ease. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said without thinking, if you really want to repay me, why not tell me about what you've seen and experienced in these 10,000 years? I'm very interested in the world outside the boundless heaven continent, but I haven't been able to find any clues all along and know nothing about the outside world. Chao Qingyu was stunned for a moment and asked in disbelief, just that simple. This is also too. Ji Tianqing smiled faintly and said, it's insignificant to you. But to people who have never left the boundless heaven continent before and desire to understand the outside world, your knowledge is a priceless treasure. Hearing this sentence, Chao Qingyu was overwhelmed by the favor and felt rather proud in his heart. Lan Er was also full of anticipation and egged him on. Qingyu, what young Master Tianqing said makes sense. Not only does he want to hear about it, I also want to hear about your experience. Since Lan Er also wanted to hear about it, Chao Qingyu no longer declined. He cleared his throat and said, all right, then I'll start with the nearest continent. Back then, I left the Tianbei region and went all the way south, searching for a way to treat Lan Er's illness along the way. About 30 years later, I left the boundless heaven continent, crossed the Xiaolong Sea area in the south, and arrived at the firmament continent. That continent was located in the south of the boundless heaven continent. The territory area was similar to the boundless heaven continent. Chapter 3269. Chao Qingyu talked about his past experiences. The first place he mentioned was the firmament continent in the south of the boundless heaven continent. The territory of that continent was about the same as the boundless heaven continent. It was also a prosperous place. Like the boundless heaven continent, the firmament continent was also divided into hundreds of regions. Each region had a few to a dozen empires and dozens to hundreds of holy kingdoms under their jurisdiction. The overlords of each region were basically middle god kings and upper god kings. When Chao Qingyu traveled to the firmament continent, he was only a lower god king. Under normal circumstances, he could protect himself and deal with all dangers and crises. But, once he encountered a middle-level divine king and region lord-level powerhouse, he could only flee in defeat. He was delayed in the firmament continent for more than 2,000 years. During this period, he was in danger several times and almost lost his life. He once mistakenly entered an ancient relic and a secret realm and was trapped for hundreds of years. He was also seriously injured by a middle god king and almost lost his life. It took him 100 or 200 years to recover. Of course, he also had an opportunity to improve his strength greatly. After a few hundred years of seclusion, he broke through the realm. More than 2,000 years later, he left the firmament continent and headed northeast. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing raised a question and interrupted him. The overlord of the boundless heaven continent is the Shura god emperor. Do you know who the overlord of the firmament continent is? A peak god king? Or a god emperor? Chao Qingyu frowned and said with a chuckle, when I left the firmament continent, it was also more than 7,000 years ago. At that time, the firmament continent was like the boundless heaven continent. No one could unify all the regions. There were only countless region masters fighting. Ji Tianqing was a little disappointed and asked, so, you don't know the current situation of the firmament continent? Chao Qingyu nodded and said, after leaving the firmament continent, I never went back. It has been more than 7,000 years. However, when I was in other continents, I heard some god kings mention it. 1,000 years ago, there seemed to be a drastic change that rewrote the history of the god realm and made each continent have an overlord. According to them, the overlord of the firmament continent is the Nebula God Emperor. Nebula God Emperor? Ji Tianqing frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he sneered in his heart. Dao Xingyun, Dao Xingyun. Back then, when you and a few other bastards attacked me, you were the weakest among the peak divine kings. You were the one with the lowest reputation and status. I didn't expect you to call yourself the God Emperor and control the firmament continent. As Ji Tianqing thought to himself, a figure involuntarily appeared in his mind. It was a handsome purple-robed god clan member in high spirits. His appearance was extraordinary, and his temperament was feminine and reserved. Furthermore, he was also the youngest peak divine king apart from Kenshin. His talent and aptitude were extraordinary. Even though Dao Xingyun was the youngest among the 5 leading figures during the Pantheon War, he was the one with the least experience and authority. However, he must have used some means or had some adventures to control the firmament continent. Ji Tianqing sank into his memories, recalling the events of the past. Chao Qingyu glanced at him and asked in confusion, Chao Tianqing, have you heard of the Nebula God Emperor? Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and shook his head, I haven't even left the boundless heaven continent. How could I have heard of it? Oh. Chao Qingyu dispelled his doubts and continued, after leaving the firmament continent, I crossed the extremely dangerous stormy sea area and headed northeast. Because I heard that in the Qiankuan continent in the northeast, there were a few famous peak alchemists who could refine elixirs that could transform the divine soul. The boundless sky sea was vaster than the continent, and there were too many ancient divine beasts. It was far more dangerous than the continent. In order to cross the stormy sea area and the boundless sea area, I spent 1,000 years and encountered more than a dozen life and death crises. In those 2 seas, I not only met the peerless powerhouses who lived in seclusion in the sky sea, but also met the dominating ancient divine beasts and countless species that had never been heard of before. Fortunately, after 1,000 years, I finally arrived at the Qiankuan continent. Hearing Chao Qingyu mention the Qiankuan continent and the situation of that continent, Ji Tianqing's memories were evoked. The Qiankuan continent. At present, the structure of the heavenly realm hasn't changed. It's still the same as 1,000 years ago. There are only 4 continents and 1 reincarnation island. Haotian, firmament, Qiankuan, and chaos are distributed in the 4 directions of the heavenly realm. The reincarnation island is located between the 4 continents. In addition to the continents, the heavenly realm is full of dangerous and mysterious seas. Chao Qingyu's tone was neither fast nor slow as she spoke tirelessly. The situation of the Qianquan continent he described was similar to Ji Tianqing's memory. The territory of the Qianquan continent was far larger than that of Haotian and Firmament. There were also more gods of various races. Of course, there were also more powerhouses on this continent. It was full of all kinds of strange people. Chao Qingyu described his experience in the Qianquan continent. For more than 2,000 years, he had experienced hundreds of dangers and crises. Chapter 3270. Chao Qingyu found a way to save Lan, in the chaotic continent, which was the most spacious place with countless experts. It was the wind-thunder soul-cleansing elixir, a divine elixir that could transform one's bloodline and divine soul. After many years of investigation, Chao Qingyu finally found the whereabouts of the wind-thunder soul-cleansing elixir, which was obtained by Yank not long ago. Yank was a descendant of the Yen clan. His bloodline and talent were restricted, so he could only reach the 6th level of the Divine King realm. He was destined to never become an upper Divine King. Therefore, he racked his brains to obtain the wind-thunder soul-cleansing elixir. He wanted to use this divine elixir to change his bloodline and talent so that he could reach the 7th level of the Divine King realm. However, he could not take it immediately. He had to wait until he reached the 6th level of the Divine King realm. Therefore, Yank kept the divine elixir for future use. However, he did not expect that Chao Qingyu had his eyes on the divine elixir. He spent 100 years to disguise himself and sneak into the domain chief's manor. He investigated the whereabouts of the divine elixir step by step and grasped the defenses of the domain chief's manor. After nearly 100 years of planning, Chao Qingyu finally found the right opportunity to steal the wind-thunder soul-cleansing elixir. However, Yank soon found out. He immediately abandoned everything and chased after Chao Qingyu with all his might. They set off from the Tianchuan domain and fled toward the northwest, crossing half of the chaotic continent. After leaving the chaotic continent, they crossed the extremely dangerous stormy sea region. In order to get rid of Yank's pursuit, Chao Qingyu broke into the mysterious Reincarnation Island and tried to deal with Yank. One fled while the other chased. After 100 years, they finally returned to the Tianbei region of the boundless heaven continent. During this period of time, the two of them had fought countless times. At least 8 times, Chao Qingyu was severely injured by Yank and almost captured. However, he relied on his strong willpower and used all kinds of trump cards and methods to successfully escape. This also caused Chao Qingyu's injuries to accumulate. They had damaged the foundation of his divine path and could not be healed at all. Because of this, he endured his injuries and fled back to the Green Jade Palace. However, when he relaxed his mind, he immediately fell unconscious. Chao Qingyu was still talking about his experiences during his escape. Lan was listened attentively. Her heart was clenched, she was very worried and felt. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was distracted as he thought to himself, "Great wisdom Emperor God. How did the chaotic continent fall into her hands and be controlled by her? The heavens to God Emperor she was the emperor of the King dynasty. Among the 5 divine kings, heavens, emperor the heavens, to heavens, heavens. Before the eternal heavenly book appeared in the world, Pan Ruo was only a 9th degree divine king. She was still a step away from becoming a peak divine king. To Lan to heavens. Heavens, the fame of these 2 experts was too great, their halos too dazzling. In heavens was Ins. There was no enmity between Kenshin and Pan Ruo. They even had some friendship. After all, Pan Ruo had sparred with Kenshin. She had discussed the divine path with Kenshin and received some pointers. Even when Pan Ruo wanted to refine the Heaven's Heart pill, she had to ask Kenshin for help. Although the two of them were not very good friends, they were definitely not enemies either. However, when the Heaven's Punishing Array and Eternal Heavens book appeared, Pan Ruo was tempted by Yu Ming and Lu Jiuyang. She joined the team to kill Kenshin and became one of the 5 leaders. Kenshin was not surprised by this. He did not blame Pan Ruo for biting the hand that fed her. He understood Pan Ruo's character. She was cold as ice and cut off her emotions and desires. She only pursued the divine path. Pan Ruo could give up everything in order to pursue the divine king realm. It was reasonable for her to collude with Lu Jiuyang, Yu Ming and Azura to obtain the Heaven's Punishing Array. However, there was one thing that Ji Tianqing did not understand. After his death, the Netherworld Divine King should have ruled the chaotic continent. How could it be Pan Ruo? If the ruler of the chaotic continent was Pan Ruo, then what about the Netherworld Divine King? Could it be that this person did not understand the mysteries of heaven and did not break through the God Emperor realm? Was he still a peak divine king? Or, after Kenshin's death, the 5 divine kings killed each other in order to obtain the Heaven's Eternal Heavens book? With this question in mind, Ji Tianqing asked Chao Qingyu, when you were dealing with Yank on the Reincarnation Island, it should have been a few hundred years ago. Who was the ruler of the Reincarnation Island? Chao Qingyu had expected him to ask this question. He answered without hesitation, the god of the underworld. I see. Ji Tianqing was relieved. Seeing that he had stopped asking, Chao Qingyu continued to talk about his escape. Ji Tianqing's mind started to wander again. He thought to himself, the Netherworld and Pan Ruo both came from the chaotic continent. Especially the Netherworld, the foundation of his power is in the chaotic continent. Logically speaking, the chaotic continent's territory, population, and resources are dozens of times more than the Reincarnation Island. Why did the Netherworld not rule the chaotic continent but choose the Reincarnation Island? Could it be that he and Pan Ruo both comprehended the Heaven's Eternal Heavens book and both broke through to the God Emperor realm, but he was not as strong as Pan Ruo? Or is it because the Reincarnation Island has an eternal space passage that leads to the Dragon Realm? The Netherworld wanted to guard the passage between the God Realm and the Dragon Realm, so he chose to occupy the Reincarnation Island. Ji Tianqing secretly guessed, but he could not confirm the answer. He would probably only be able to solve the mystery if he went to the Reincarnation Island personally or met the god of the underworld and Pan Ruo, the God Emperor. Ever since he came to the God Realm, he had been thinking of ways to gather information and understand the situation in the God Realm. Whether it was in the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom or the Great Yan Empire, he could not find any clues. Fortunately, he had come to the Green Jade Palace and met Chao Qingyu. Only then did he get the answers and information he wanted. The current situation was no different from 1,000 years ago. There were still 4 continents and 1 reincarnation island. In the endless sky ocean, there were dozens of sea regions where countless divine beasts, powerful immortals, and many blessed grotto heavens and mystic realms were hidden. However, the biggest difference between now and 1,000 years ago was that the 4 continents and the reincarnation island all had overlords. Moreover, the 5 overlords who stood at the peak of the God realm and had reached the God Emperor realm were the 5 people who had killed Kenshin back then. At the thought of this, Ji Tianqing was filled with anger, and killing intent surged in his heart. Ha! The 5 bastards who tried to kill me back then have all taken the last step to stand at the peak of the God realm and become the God Emperor that everyone looks up to. However, I fell under their siege and was reincarnated 1,000 years later to make a comeback. If I want to take revenge and kill those 5 bastards, how difficult will that be? The 5 great territories of the God realm are all controlled by my enemies. Now, I am truly surrounded by enemies. In this life, the 5 God Emperors had become even more powerful, and their forces and foundations were even more stable. If Ji Tianqing wanted to take revenge, the difficulty had increased tenfold. He had not even reached the God King realm, let alone the God Emperor realm, which was above the God King realm. Chapter 3271. Understanding the situation in the divine world, Ji Tianqing felt even more pressure and secretly made up his mind to work harder. At the same time, he was also secretly vigilant. In the future, he had to pay more attention to secrecy and absolutely not expose his identity. After all, the 4 continents and Reincarnation Island were all enemies' territories. Once his true identity was exposed, it would be known by the 5 god emperors very quickly. At that time, even if he recovered to the Divine King realm, he would also be strangled by the several god emperors. In his previous life, his strength realm was the same as those 5 god emperors. They were all peak divine kings. Therefore, even if he fell, he could still reverse reincarnation in heaven's secrets, retain his remnant soul with a secret art, and reincarnate. But this life was different. Those 5 people all became god emperors. Their means must be exceedingly formidable, unfathomable. Once he fell into the hands of a certain god emperor, he would definitely die thoroughly. It was absolutely impossible to have the chance to reincarnate again. Thinking up to here, Ji Tianqing secretly clenched both fists, his eyes becoming determined. At this time, Chao Qingyu also finished talking about his escape experience. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was still distracted, Chao Qingyu could not help but take a few more glances at him, his expression somewhat subtle. Lan Er did not detect the abnormality and did not think too much. She asked Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Tianqing, you're so concerned about matters outside the boundless heaven continent. Do you want to go outside and make a name for yourself? With your strength and talent, you'll definitely become a divine king in time. Furthermore, I can also see that you're unwilling to be mediocre and have lofty ambitions. You definitely won't stay in the boundless heaven continent forever." Ji Tianqing's thoughts were interrupted, and he hurriedly came back to his senses. After hearing Lan Er's words, he just smiled and said, "It's not as complicated as you think. I'm just very curious about the outside world, that's all. Oh right, both of your injuries are somewhat stubborn. I'm afraid it will harm the foundation of your divine Tao. To be on the safe side, you guys still have to go into long-term closed seclusion for treatment." Chao Qingyu nodded and said, "Young Master Tianqing, rest assured. I've long made preparations and plans. The divine palace is already destroyed, this place is also not suitable to stay for long. We will go to a place, find a person, and ask him for help." Ji Tianqing nodded. "That's good." Lan Er asked again, "Young Master Tianqing, your injuries have already healed, and your condition has recovered. What plans do you have after today?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said with a slight smile, "Tianbei region is too small. I want to go all the way south and travel around, to experience the glory of the boundless heaven continent. What about you guys? What plans do you have?" Lan Er revealed a faint smile and replied, "Let's go find that person first and ask him to treat our injuries. After we recover, we will find a secluded place where no one will disturb us, build another divine palace, and live in seclusion from the world. My wife and I have experienced too many dangers and tribulations. We have also endured too much pain and suffering. After being separated for tens of thousands of years, it was like being reborn. Being able to reunite was a blessing from the heavens. From now on, we will never be separated again." As she spoke, she hugged Chao Qingyu's arm. The husband and wife looked at each other and revealed happy and satisfied smiles. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing also nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "After seeing all the vanity of the world, you will know that ordinary is true. You have experienced so many hardships, you must cherish each other's fate. In the future, it is also very good to be an immortal couple that is envied by the world and not disturbed." Having known each other for a while, Ji Tianqing expressed sympathy for their experience. Now that he saw them happily reunited, he also wished them well in his heart. Both sides exchanged a few words of greeting, and Ji Tianqing bowed and bade farewell. Lan Er stayed in the alternate space. Chao Qingyu took the initiative to offer to send Ji Tianqing off. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 white lights flashed. Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu left the alternate space and appeared amidst the vast sea of clouds. Standing amidst the clouds, Ji Tianqing cupped his hands toward Chao Qingyu and said, "Divine King Qingyu, there is no need to send us off. Let us part ways here. You must recover as soon as possible in case Yang comes back for revenge." Chao Qingyu cupped his hands in return. "Thank you for the reminder, young master. I know what to do. Then I will take my leave." Ji Tianqing said no more and turned to fly away. Chao Qingyu hesitated for a moment and finally made up his mind. He raised his hand and shouted, "Young master, please wait. Young master, please wait. I have a few questions to ask." Ji Tianqing stopped and turned to look at him. "Divine King Qingyu, what do you want to say?" Chao Qingyu frowned slightly and stared at him. He said in a low voice, "Although I have only spent a short time with young master, it has brought back many memories. I still remember that more than 1,300 years ago, I was traveling the Chaos Continent in search of a way to save Lan. I once met a human divine king in the Inferno Sea. He was a supremely talented expert of the sword Dao. Back then, due to a misunderstanding, I attacked that divine king. I was clearly 2 levels higher than that divine king, but he easily countered my moves and defeated me in 3 moves. That divine king didn't kill me and even gave me some pointers. Only then did I have an epiphany and break through my bottleneck." Chao Qingyu revealed a look of reminiscence as he recounted the events of the past. Ji Tianqing was on high alert but didn't show it on his face. Chao Qingyu sighed and smiled wryly. "Speaking of which, that human divine king taught me a lot, but I don't even know his name." With that, he stared at Ji Tianqing and observed Ji Tianqing's reaction. Ji Tianqing didn't show anything unusual. He smiled and said, "Humans are rare to begin with. It's normal for Divine King Qingyu to recall the past when he saw me." Seeing that he didn't reveal any flaws, Chao Qingyu tried again. "This is indeed one of the reasons. However, what surprised me the most was that when I saw young Master Tianqing, it was as if I saw that divine king. Your figure, appearance, and temperament are very similar to that human divine king. If not for the fact that you haven't reached the divine king realm, I would almost believe you to be that divine king." Ji Tianqing pretended to be stunned before revealing an expression of shock and disbelief. "Divine King Qingyu, you say that I'm very similar to that human divine king? Isn't that too inconceivable? There are no 2 identical leaves in the world, much less 2 identical people. Furthermore, by comparing me to that divine king, aren't you overestimating me too much? For that human divine king to be able to teach you, it shows that his strength and attainments in the sword Dao have reached the acme of perfection. I haven't even reached the divine king realm, so how can I compare to that human divine king?" Seeing that Ji Tianqing's reaction was still normal without any clues, Chao Qingyu was still unwilling to give up. After a moment of silence, he continued, "However, I see that young Master Tianqing's sword Dao has reached the point of perfection. It's admirable. In fact, the sword Dao divine ability you used was also used by that human divine king back then. Is this just a coincidence?" Clearly, Chao Qingyu had long suspected Ji Tianqing's true identity. However, this was no trivial matter. He didn't dare to ask rashly, so he endured until now and secretly tested Ji Tianqing. Chapter 3272. Previously, Ji Tianqing had made up his mind to keep it a secret and not reveal his true identity. Now that Chao Qingyu was suspicious and probed repeatedly, all the more he could not reveal any flaws. After pondering for a moment, he also revealed a puzzled look and pretended to be at a loss. Is there really such a strange thing? This must be a coincidence. Divine King Azure Jade might not know, but many of the divine powers and moves of the human race look very similar. Especially the sword Dao, it has many variations but does not deviate from the root. The similarity is very high. After all, those godly kings and godly lords would verify each other when comprehending and creating some sword Tao divine powers. The most common thing everyone does is to learn and borrow from the cultivation methods of their predecessors. After tens of thousands of years of development, the divine powers and cultivation methods that everyone cultivates naturally become more and more similar. Ji Tianqing blindly came up with this specious theory and finally managed to muddle his way out of it. Even if Chao Qingyu still had some doubts, he could not refute and could only nod in agreement. Young Master Tianqing's words make sense. From the looks of it, I was indeed overthinking. I hope young Master Tianqing doesn't mind. I was just overwhelmed with emotions and recalled those memories because of the scenery. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a smile, Divine King Azure Jade, there's no need to be so polite. You have experienced so many hardships and dangers, it's normal to have some emotions. Alright, if there's nothing else, then I'll take my leave. Chao Qingyu did not say anything else. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and bowed solemnly, saying, Thank you again for saving my life, young Master Tianqing. I don't know when we will meet again after this parting. I wish young Master Tianqing a smooth path to the divine Tao and reach the peak. Ji Tianqing smiled and waved at him. He turned and flew towards the vast sea of clouds, all the way south. Chao Qingyu stood in place and waited for a full 7 minutes. When Ji Tianqing disappeared 30,000 miles away, he turned and left. Swoosh! Returning to the alternate dimension, he flew across the sky unhurriedly to meet up with Lan Er. Along the way, he kept frowning as hundreds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Did I really remember wrongly? Was he thinking too much? But this shouldn't be the case. I remember that human god king's appearance, gaze, and temperament clearly. Compared to young Master Tianqing, there was no difference at all. How could there be two people who looked so similar in this world? Could it be that the human god king had lost his memories? But this wasn't right either. Even if he lost his memories, his cultivation realm wouldn't regress and return to the divine lord realm. Or was young Master Tianqing the son of that human god king? That makes sense, but looking at young Master Tianqing's reaction, it doesn't seem to be. Chao Qingyu was puzzled. When he landed on the peak of the mountain, Lan Er saw that he was frowning and asked, Qingyu, have you sent Sir Tianqing away? Why are you frowning? What happened? Chao Qingyu hurriedly suppressed his chaotic thoughts and said with a slight smile, Don't worry, nothing happened. Young Master Tianqing has already left. We should also leave this place and go find Brother Yan for help. Not seeing him for 10,000 years, I wonder how he's doing recently. Did he break through again? Lana did not ask any more either. She nodded and said, All right, then let's set off right away. Hence, husband and wife left the alternate dimension and flew over the vast sea of clouds together, flying towards the southeast. At the same time, located in the central region of the North Heaven region, a puzzling thing happened in the Wind Frost Empire. The Wind Frost Empire was located in the south of the Great Yan Empire. The territory area and population were more than the Great Yan Empire. In comparison, the Wind Frost Empire's forces and foundation were somewhat more robust than the Great Yan Empire. 5,000 years ago, there were still frequent wars between the two great empires. But the Wind Frost Empire lost more than one. However, ever since the Great Yan Empire negotiated peace with the Wind Frost Empire, it had been peaceful all along. For close to 5,000 years, the Wind Frost Empire had been peaceful all along. Nothing major happened. The people and gods of the more than 10 divine kingdoms were all recuperating, living in harmony and peace. However, since half a month ago, the Wind Frost Emperor had issued an oracle, breaking the peace that had lasted for 5,000 years. No one knew what the Wind Frost Emperor wanted to do, to actually transfer high divine lords from the various divine kingdoms. In order to ensure the number, and to make the various divine kingdoms obey the order, the Wind Frost Emperor actually issued a mission. 15 divine kingdoms, each divine kingdom had to transfer at least 20 high divine lords. Furthermore, this mission had a time limit of 2 months to complete. The divine kingdoms that were unable to complete the mission would have to bear the wrath and punishment of the Wind Frost Emperor. And the divine kingdoms that exceeded the quota would be rewarded by the Wind Frost Emperor. When the oracle reached the various divine kingdoms, it caused an uproar in the 15 divine kingdoms. Although 20 high divine lords were not many, it was also an extremely powerful force. Every high divine lord was the pillar of the various divine kingdoms. Nothing could happen to them easily. The various divine kingdoms' monarchs were anxious and uneasy, secretly guessing the Wind Frost Emperor's intentions. Some people guessed that the Wind Frost Emperor did this to snatch the high divine lords and bring them under the empire's command. His goal was to weaken the various divine kingdoms' power. Some people also guessed that the Wind Frost Emperor was gathering experts to prepare for war. After the 300 high divine lords were gathered, the Wind Frost Emperor would most likely start a war. And the Wind Frost Empire's first target would definitely be the Great Yan Empire in the north, followed by the 2 neighboring empires. Some people guessed that the Wind Frost Emperor had always been at the peak of the Divine Lord realm and had never been able to break through to the Divine King realm. This time, the Wind Frost Emperor had gathered 300 high divine lords because he had obtained an ancient evil technique. He needed to sacrifice 300 high divine lords to help him break through to the Divine King realm. The high divine lords that were transferred from various divine kingdoms were to be sacrificed and sent to the empire's imperial city to die. These 3 theories were more mainstream and spread widely, causing people to be in a state of panic. Other than that, there were hundreds of big and small rumors that were spread widely in various divine kingdoms. For a time, many divine kingdoms were filled with rumors, causing the people's hearts to waver. Not long after, there were rumors that came out of the empire's imperial city. It was said that the Wind Frost Emperor had also issued an oracle, ordering the empire's officials to gather the best cultivation resources and store them in the imperial palace. For a month, every day, there would be a large number of imperial guards escorting priceless resources and treasures into the imperial palace's treasury. After this news spread, the various divine kingdoms' experts were even more certain of their guesses. The Wind Frost Emperor was either preparing for war, preparing to attack the Great Yan Empire, or he wanted to use the ancient evil technique to sacrifice 300 high divine lords and a sea of resources in order to break through to the Divine King realm. As a result, the various divine kingdoms' monarchs felt even more conflicted. Even if they were 100 times unwilling, they had to follow the oracle and think of ways to transfer 20 high divine lords. But no one knew that these 2 oracles were not the Wind Frost Emperor's original intention. Yang hid in the imperial city for a day and understood the strength and heritage of the Frost Empire. He immediately changed his mind. He was no longer satisfied with just sneaking into the treasury and stealing large amounts of resources and treasures. He had an even bolder idea. It was another dark and windy night. Yang snuck into the palace and searched for the whereabouts of the emperor. Even though the imperial palace was heavily guarded both inside and outside, with many experts overseeing it, it could be said to be heavily guarded. But that could only guard against divine monarch powerhouses. It definitely could not stop a divine king like him. With his strength and means, he was able to enter the imperial palace without being detected by anyone. At that time, the Feng Shuang Emperor was dealing with government affairs in the study room, in a lazy and leisurely state. After all, the Wind Frost Empire had been peaceful for 5,000 years. Without the threat of external enemies, the Wind Frost Emperor also relaxed his vigilance. He was also a peak divine monarch. Before obtaining the opportunity to break through to the Divine King realm, there was no need for him to cultivate in seclusion. Normally, he cultivated his mind, comprehended the principles of heaven and earth, and took care of the empire's government affairs. Under such circumstances, the Wind Frost Emperor was not on guard at all. He had already been targeted by a Divine King powerhouse. The result was indisputable. Yank entered the study room without anyone noticing and used a king-level divine array to seal the study room. This way, no matter what happened in the study room, the outside world would not know. The Wind Frost Emperor was immediately alert and took out his dragon sword to search for enemies. But he was destined to be a tragedy. No matter what he did, it was useless. In order to save time and not cause too much of a commotion, Yank did not appear. He maintained his invisible state and brazenly attacked the Wind Frost Emperor, injuring him in one move. The Wind Frost Emperor endured his injuries and was about to call for help and resist. Yank used his secret technique again and attacked continuously. The Wind Frost Emperor had no strength to fight back and was stunned. In less than 3 breaths' time, he was subdued by Yank and captured on the spot. Only now did Yank reveal his true face. He was 10 zhang tall and extremely majestic. Standing in the study room, his head almost reached the ceiling. His wide and huge palms grabbed the Wind Frost Emperor tightly and sealed his strength, making him unable to move. Seeing Yank's appearance, the Wind Frost Emperor was shocked. His heart was in turmoil. Other race? Divine King Powerhouse. Although he was panicking and confused, the Wind Frost Emperor quickly calmed down and pretended to be calm. He asked, "How did I offend you to make you go to such lengths?" He believed that there was no such thing as hatred for no reason. As long as he could communicate with Yank, there would be room to turn the situation around. However, the Wind Frost Emperor did not expect that Yank had never thought of communicating with him. Yank did not need to negotiate, but simple and crude control. Under the Wind Frost Emperor's terrified and panicked eyes, Yank did not say a word and directly used a secret technique to control the Wind Frost Emperor's divine soul. The Wind Frost Emperor struggled violently. His desire to live was very strong. He first tried to communicate with Yank, then begged Yank for mercy and said that he was willing to obey. However, Yank was stubborn. He didn't listen to him at all. Expressionlessly, he used the soul's secret technique. Half an hour later, the Wind Frost Emperor fell unconscious and his divine soul was controlled by Yank. Only then did Yank put down the Wind Frost Emperor and used a ray of divine power to wake him up. Although the Wind Frost Emperor did not seem to have changed after waking up. However, he had become very quiet, and was very obedient and respectful towards Yank. From this moment on, the Wind Frost Emperor became Yank's puppet and was 100% obedient to Yank. Even if Yank ordered him to kill himself, he would not hesitate at all. Of course. Yank turned him into a puppet to plan something big. How could he let him die? This king needs a good place to cultivate and heal in seclusion for a while. In addition, this king also needs the best divine pills, divine stones, and cultivation resources of the Wind Frost Empire. Moreover, this matter must be kept absolutely secret. Other than you, no one else can know. Everything you do, everything you give, everything you do must be in your name. You must not mention this king. Yank did not waste any more words and directly gave the order to the Wind Frost Emperor. The Wind Frost Emperor bowed and listened. After Yank finished speaking, he nodded solemnly and said, "Yes, my lord. This old servant will do his best to complete it in the shortest time possible." The high and mighty Wind Frost Emperor of the past had become Yank's servant just like that. This was the power of the Divine Soul's secret technique. Chapter 3276. The difference in numbers between the two sides was huge. The Wind Frost Empire only had 200 high-ranked divine lords. On the other hand, the Great Yen Empire had more than 100,000 people. However, the result of the battle was a shocking contrast. Since the start of the battle, the Great Yen Empire's defenders had been rapidly decreasing. In just 15 minutes, the Great Yen Empire's defenders had been reduced by half. There were only about 50,000 people left. Of course. The defenders who died first were slightly weaker and had less combat experience. The remaining 50,000 defenders were clearly more elite and had stronger combat strength. Even in the face of such heavy casualties, they were able to hold their ground and did not break down and flee. Under the command of the many defenders, the 50,000 defenders quickly formed a battle formation and worked together to resist the attacks of the 200 high-ranked divine lords. This was effective. The speed at which the defenders died decreased significantly. The momentum of the 200 high-ranked divine lords' attacks also weakened slightly. Seeing this, Yank was clearly a little impatient. He was invisible and stayed in the Wind Frost Emperor's personal secret chamber, observing the situation on the battlefield. Meanwhile, the Wind Frost Emperor sat in the main hall of the warship, waiting for Yank's orders to command the many divine lords to fight. The Imperial Guard Inspector and the 18 Reverends were also standing in the main hall, waiting for orders. "I'm in a hurry. Don't waste time with those small fries. End the battle quickly." Yank sent the order to the Wind Frost Emperor with his divine sense. The Wind Frost Emperor hurriedly replied, "Yes, sir." Then, he ordered the many divine lords, ordering 100 high-ranked divine lords to participate in the battle. The 100 divine lords who stayed in the 2 divine warships were already ready to go. They were just waiting for the Wind Frost Emperor's order. They could not wait to charge out of the warships, brandishing their divine weapons and sharp swords. The 40,000 defenders of the Sol Dang Mountain thought that the Wind Frost Empire's vanguard only had 200 high-ranked divine lords. Even so, they would definitely not be able to hold on. In less than an hour, they would be slaughtered. However, they did not expect another 100 divine lord experts to appear halfway. In their shock and horror, the defenders' morale was affected, and their battle formation was clearly deformed. Swoosh! 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 Rumble! With the addition of the 100 high divine lords, the light of divine arts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth poured down in torrents, and the tens of thousands of defenders were instantly annihilated. At least tens of thousands of defenders were crushed by the light of the divine spell, and blood splattered all over the sky. Deafening booms and heart-wrenching screams reverberated endlessly between heaven and earth. When 300 high divine lords joined forces to attack, their momentum reached its peak. It was truly unstoppable. As for the remaining 30,000 soldiers, they immediately collapsed and were mercilessly massacred. After a short 7 minutes, the battle was over. More than 30,000 soldiers were slaughtered, leaving almost no survivors. After all, those celestial deity realm guards could not escape beyond a radius of 10,000 miles at all. Even the aftermath of the battle could blast them into pieces. The one who fought alone and bathed in blood to the end was the Southern Guardian General. But under the besiegement of more than 20 high-level divine lords, he only lasted 3 moves before he was completely killed. With the death of the Southern Protector General, the battle had come to an end. The Sol Dang Mountain was razed to the ground, and the surrounding 30,000 miles were turned into ruins. Many towering peaks no longer existed. 100,000 soldiers and many generals were buried here. The ruined battlefield was dyed red with the blood of the 100,000 soldiers. There were divine weapons scattered all over the battlefield, as well as many armors, equipment, and interspatial rings. The 300 high divine lords followed the usual practice of cleaning up the battlefield and collecting the spoils of war. In this battle, they did not suffer heavy losses. Only a few 7th Heaven Realm God Lords died in battle, and over 30 people were injured. Compared to the rich spoils of war, they had profited greatly. However, the Wind Frost Emperor ordered everyone to quickly return to the divine ship and continue advancing. Such an abnormal order made the 300 high divine lords feel strange. This did not seem like a battle. How could there be such a thing as not cleaning up the battlefield and counting the spoils of war after a bloody battle? However, the Wind Frost Emperor was high and mighty, so naturally, he would not open his mouth to explain. The Imperial Guard Governor hurriedly stepped forward and explained to the 300 high divine lords, why did we send so few elite soldiers to attack the Great Yan Empire? It's because we want to fight a surprise blitzkrieg battle. Any delay will delay the battle and affect His Majesty's plan. Hearing this, the 300 high divine lords were enlightened. Everyone guessed that the Wind Frost Emperor's target was most likely the imperial capital of the Great Yan Empire or a very important treasure land. Therefore, the high divine lords gave up on collecting the spoils of war and quickly returned to the divine ship. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two divine ships set off again, as fast as lightning, cutting through the night and heading north. At the same time, the imperial capital of the Great Yan Empire. Night had just fallen, but the imperial capital was still brightly lit and bustling. The imperial palace was also brightly lit, and people were moving about. Emperor Yan Yongning was handling government affairs in his study. He looked solemn and his brows were tightly knitted. Ever since the incident at the Green Jade Palace, almost all the high divine lords of the 50 forces had been wiped out. Not only had the high divine lords of the various sects and families all died in the Green Jade Palace, but so had the royal family's experts. Even the patriarch of the Yan family, Yan Tiangang, had not returned. Yan Yongning had sent the Black Flame governor and a large group of imperial guards to the Cloud Sea secret land to find Yan Tiangang and the others. In the end, the Black Flame governor and the others reported that the Green Jade Palace had disappeared. As for Yan Tiangang and the others, they had also disappeared without a trace, as if they had evaporated into thin air. Yan Yongning had no choice but to go to the ancestral hall to check on Yan Tiangong's soul lamp. In the end, Yan Tiangong's soul lamp had been extinguished, which meant that he had died. The failure of the Green Jade Palace had greatly reduced the number of high divine lords of the Great Yan Empire. In particular, the death of Yan Tiangang and many other royal family experts had weakened the royal family's power even more. Even though Yan Yongning's biggest problem, Prince Lian, had also been killed by Ji Tianqing. However, compared to the loss of the Great Yan Empire, this gain was really insignificant. After nearly 2 months, Yan Yongning gradually recovered from this heavy blow. However, he was still in a bad mood, and his temper was even more irritable than before. Suddenly, a golden divine light descended from the sky and landed in front of Yan Yongning. Swoosh! The golden light stopped and a golden jade slip appeared, spinning slowly. Seeing this jade slip with mysterious patterns carved on it, Yan Yongning's body stiffened and a trace of gloominess flashed in his eyes. An emergency message from the Southern Guardian General. Did something happen at the Sol Dang mountain camp? Yan Yongning frowned and had a bad premonition. He quickly reached out and grabbed the jade slip. He cast a spell to open the seal on the jade slip and used his immortal will to read the information in the jade slip. The jade slip was indeed sent by the Southern Guardian General. The content was very simple and there was only one sentence. However, that one sentence made Yan Yongning's expression change drastically, as if he had been struck by lightning. Chapter 3277. At that moment, Yan Yongning's face was ashen. His eyes were as cold as ice, and his entire body was bursting with anger. 5,100 years. The two countries have been at peace for 5,000 years. That damned Wind Frost Emperor, why did he start a war at this juncture? That despicable bastard. He must have received some news that his country is suffering a serious setback. That's why he's taking advantage of the situation. Yan Yongning roared angrily. The veins on his forehead were throbbing, and his face was somewhat ferocious. In the past, even if the Wind Frost Empire started a war, he would not be afraid or retreat. Although the Great Yan Empire was slightly weaker, it was not a big problem as the defending side. However, it was different now. The Great Yan Empire had just suffered a heavy blow, and the Wind Frost Empire had launched a surprise attack. If it was not handled properly, the Great Yan Empire's situation would definitely worsen. If it was light, the country's fortune would be greatly damaged, and they would lose their cities and land. If it was heavy, the experts would wither, and millions of soldiers would be slaughtered, causing many kingdoms to be uneasy. In short, this was an extremely severe test. The fate of the great Yan Empire might very well be rewritten. After taking a few deep breaths, Yan Yongning forced himself to calm down. He frowned and analyzed the situation. 200 high-level divine lords as the vanguard. The Wind Frost Empire has really put in a lot of effort. The 100,000 soldiers guarding the Sol Dang Mountain will definitely not be able to withstand it. They will probably be slaughtered in 4 to 6 hours. Even if I immediately order the troops from the nearby kingdoms to rush over to help, there will not be enough time. General Zhennan also knows this, so he did not ask for help from me. Instead, he asked me to be on guard. I think the general is prepared to sacrifice himself for the country. Thinking of this, Yan Yongning's face darkened. He hurriedly summoned the Grand Marshal, the Imperial Guard Governor, and a dozen generals to the study to discuss the military situation. A moment later, they received an urgent order from Yan Yongning and rushed over as fast as they could. After a few minutes, the highest-ranking generals of the Great Yan Empire were all present. Everyone had a premonition that something extremely serious had happened. Their expressions and moods were very grave. Yan Yongning explained the situation in a low voice. He decisively gave the orders and gave the generals their tasks. The Wind Frost Empire is coming fiercely. We will definitely lose the Sol Dang Mountain tonight. General Zhennan might also sacrifice himself for the country. The only thing the 100,000 defenders can do is buy time for us. Immediately send a message to Yinan Divine Kingdom, gather the army and experts as quickly as possible, and rush to the Yanling Mountain Range in the middle of the Divine Kingdom to intercept the vanguard of the Wind Frost Empire. In addition, issue an order in my name to all the divine nations to gather their armies and gather at the Imperial City in the shortest time possible to defend the Imperial City. Yan Yongning had also guessed that the target of the Frost Empire's surprise attack was most likely the Imperial City. He ordered the various countries along the way to send their armies to intercept the 2 divine warships of the Wind Frost Empire. At the same time, he also mobilized a large number of experts and armies from other divine nations to rush to the Imperial City to protect the Emperor. He calmly gave out order after order, giving the Grand Marshals and Grand Generals their respective tasks. Everyone didn't waste any more time. After accepting the mission, they left the study room to carry out their orders. After everyone left, Yan Yongning was the only one left in the study. At this time, a black shadow emerged from the corner of the study and stood behind Yan Yongning respectfully. Your Majesty, the Frost Empire has been accumulating strength for 5,000 years. Taking advantage of this opportunity to launch a surprise attack, it will definitely not be that simple. With 200 upper divine lords as the vanguard, there must be 1,000,000 troops behind them. With the current situation of our country, it is absolutely impossible to resist the invasion of the Frost Empire. We can only stall for time. Perhaps within a month, the army of the Frost Empire will reach the Imperial City. This person was the Heiyan governor, Yan Yongning's absolute confidant. After hearing this, Yan Yongning was not angry. Instead, he nodded in agreement. That's right. What you said, I have already expected. Therefore, the deployment I made just now was only to do my best to stall for time. If we really want to resolve this war and avoid casualties, we can only ask the Domain Lord to step in. The Heiyan governor pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. Although the Domain Lord is in seclusion all year round, his whereabouts are very mysterious. However, he has long ordered that in order to maintain the peace and stability of the Tianbei region, the empires are prohibited from launching a full-scale war. As long as your Majesty reports this matter to the Domain Lord, he will definitely intervene. Yan Yongning did not say anything more and immediately left the study room, heading to the underground palace of the Imperial Palace. In the underground palace, there was a secret room that was sealed all year round. There was an altar inside that was specifically used to communicate with the ruler of the Northern Heaven Protectorate. Of course, Yan Yongning did not dare to open the secret room unless the situation was critical and he had no other choice. And now, the situation was imminent. He had no choice but to open the secret room and ask the Domain Lord for help through the communication altar. 2 days passed in a flash. The 2 divine warships of the Frost Empire sped through the territory of the Southern Yi Divine Kingdom without encountering any resistance. After all, the guards and powerhouses of the various counties were very weak. They could not even detect the whereabouts of the divine warships, so how could they intercept them? It was late at night. The sky was dotted with stars, and the moon was bright. Inside the divine warship, the Frost Emperor stood in the secret room, bowing respectfully as he reported to Yank, "My lord, the Yanling mountain range is 500,000 miles ahead. That's a major pass in the central part of the Southern Yi Divine Kingdom, and it's also the only way for us to go north. With the great Yan Emperor's style of doing things, he will definitely deploy a large number of troops in the Yanling mountain range to intercept us." Yan Ku sat cross-legged on the divine jade chair, closing his eyes and meditating. In truth, he had been using a heaven-monitoring divine ability secret technique to investigate the situation within a radius of 40,000 miles. Along the way, he had searched everywhere but did not find his target. However, he firmly believed that Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Lan Er's auras were very special. As long as they appeared within 40,000 miles of him, they would not be able to escape his detection. After a moment of silence, Yank said expressionlessly, "There's no need to waste time. Cross the Yanling mountain range as soon as possible. Don't delay my business." The Frost Emperor immediately bowed and said, "This old servant understands." Then, the Frost Emperor left the secret room to pass on the order. Yank did not move at all and continued to use his divine ability secret technique. Meanwhile, a pitch-black divine warship sped south from the north and was about to reach the Yanling mountain range. There was only a black-haired, white-robed human youth in the cockpit of the divine warship. He flew alone on the divine warship, but his divine sense spread out to investigate the situation within a radius of 30,000 miles. When he saw tens of thousands of godly spirits gathered in the towering mountain range ahead, he could not help but frown with a puzzled expression. What's happening in the Southern Yi Divine Kingdom? Why is it that on my way down south, I see armies from all the prefectures moving out and converging towards the south? Chapter 3278. There was no doubt that this person was Ji Tianqing. Not long ago, he parted ways with Chao Qingyu and Lan and drove the divine ship south. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Zhen Hong, and the others were cultivating in seclusion in the Nine Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower. Lin Shui, Lord Blood Illusion, and the others were cultivating in the secret room of the divine ship. Everyone was busy improving their strength, so Ji Tianqing did not disturb them. He drove the divine ship alone. On the way, he also thought of his next plan. Tianbei region was at the northernmost tip of the boundless heaven continent. He wanted to leave Tianbei region and fly south until he left the boundless heaven continent. After leaving the boundless heaven continent, he would fly southeast. After crossing the 2 seas and Reincarnation Island, he would reach the chaotic continent. 1,000 years ago, his territory, the Tian Shan region, was on that continent. Even though he and his friends and family had died in the Great War of the Gods 1,000 years ago, he still had old subordinates in the Tian Shan region, as well as countless loyal experts and guards. On the Primal Chaos continent, he also had some close friends who valued friendship and loyalty. Even though 1,000 years had passed and the divine world had changed, he still wanted to return to the chaotic continent to take a look. He wanted to know if his former subordinates and guards, as well as those close friends, were still alive. If they were still alive, would they be willing to follow him and help him take revenge and return to the peak? Even if his former subordinates and friends were no longer around, he still wanted to go back and revisit his old home as a way of reminiscing and paying respects. Of course, this was only a preliminary plan. He also thought of another possibility. If he broke through to the Divine King realm on the way to the chaotic continent, he would change his plan. He would choose to enter Reincarnation Island and head to the Dragon Realm through the spatial passage to find Ji Wuhan first. Anyway, he was now a 9th level Divine Lord and would become a peak Divine Lord soon. He would break through to the Divine King realm. And he would need at least 2 to 3 years to go from the boundless heaven continent to the chaotic continent. If the journey was not smooth, it was possible to spend decades or centuries. With these thoughts and plans, Ji Tianqing was full of anticipation for the future journey. Unknowingly, he entered Yinan's divine kingdom 3 days ago. On the way, he noticed that the situation in the Yinan divine kingdom was rather tense. Many county cities had sent out their elite armies to the south at full speed. They seemed to be converging in one direction. At that time, Ji Tianqing felt that something was strange and guessed that something had happened in Yinan's divine kingdom. Tonight, when he reached the Yanling mountain range, he came to a sudden realization. Hundreds of thousands of elite soldiers from various counties and more than 1,000 divine emperors gathered at the Yanling mountain range. They formed a mighty defensive formation. Ji Tianqing had the divine warship stop above the Yanling mountain range, floating in the clouds. He looked down at the tens of thousands of miles of mountain range and thought to himself, Yinan divine nation wouldn't start a war for no reason, nor would they gather 600,000 soldiers here. Unless, they were being invaded by a powerful enemy and had no choice but to summon an army to defend themselves. The South Yi Kingdom was located in the southernmost part of the Great Yan Empire. Further south was the border. Beyond the border was the Wind Frost Empire. Could it be that the Wind Frost Empire's army is here? With that in mind, Ji Tianqing guessed the answer. He was 80% sure. The Great Yan Empire and the Wind Frost Empire are old enemies. They haven't fought for nearly 5,000 years. But before that, the two empires had been fighting for more than 20,000 years. Moreover, the incident at the Green Jade Palace caused the Great Yan Empire's top experts to wither. More than 300 mid-level and high-level divine emperors died. The Wind Frost Empire must have sensed the decline of the Great Yan Empire's power, so they took the opportunity to attack. The relationship between the two empires wasn't complicated. Ji Tianqing guessed the answer and the truth after a little analysis. He didn't want to care about these mundane matters and just left. However, he hesitated for a while and decided to stay and observe the situation. After all, Yan Yongning had helped him before. He had allowed him to enter the library and read the Great Yan Empire's precious books. He had gone to the Green Jade Palace, ruined Yan Yongning's 9-year plan, snatched the king-level materials in the palace, and released the suppressed Lan. That series of events had caused more than 300 divine emperors of the Great Yan Empire to die. Even Yan Tiangang had been killed by him. Speaking of which, he still felt guilty toward Yan Yongning and the Great Yan Empire. Now that the Great Yan Empire's power was weak, the invasion of the Wind Frost Empire's army was related to him. Therefore, he decided to observe the situation. If possible, he was willing to help resist the invasion of the Wind Frost Empire. This way, it could be considered a compensation to Yan Yongning. Just as he made up his mind, the 600,000 soldiers in the Yanling mountain range had already arranged themselves into battle formations. A total of 15 battle formations were distributed in the mountain range within a radius of 50,000 miles, waiting for the enemy. Not long after, 2 beams of divine light flew over from the southern night sky, carrying with them a terrifyingly powerful divine might. Ji Tianqing used his divine perception to check and found that it was 2 divine warships. It's not the Wind Frost Empire's army. There are only 2 divine warships. How many people can it hold? A few hundred at most, less than 1,000. Ji Tianqing frowned, feeling puzzled. In the next instant, the army also discovered the arrival of the 2 divine warships. Under the command of the many divine lords, the 100,000 soldiers attacked the 2 divine warships together. The 2 divine warships did not slow down at all, nor did they have any intention of dodging. The 2 divine warships opened fire with all their might, releasing hundreds of divine power light pillars that poured down from the night sky. At the same time, more than 200 dazzling divine lights flew out from the divine warships. They were more than 200 high-level divine lords brimming with killing intent. All of them brandished their divine weapons and unleashed earth-shattering divine abilities as they launched an attack. A great battle with a great disparity in numbers instantly broke out. After Ji Tianqing used his divine perception to see the 200 divine lords clearly, a look of relief appeared in his eyes. No wonder 2 divine warships dared to invade the great Yan Empire and made the Yinan divine kingdom so nervous that they mobilized 600,000 soldiers to resist. It turns out that the Wind Frost Empire's vanguard is actually more than 200 high-ranked divine lords. Such a powerful vanguard is enough to sweep through everything and slaughter the 600,000-strong army. Seeing the strength realm of those divine lords, Ji Tianqing predicted the result. If he did not make a move to help, the 600,000 soldiers would be wiped out in at most 4 hours. After all, a high-ranked divine lord could take on thousands of celestial deity realm soldiers. With more than 200 high-ranked divine lords joining hands, even low-ranked divine kings had the chance to kill. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing decisively put away the divine warships. He took out the sword of burial of heaven, entered stealth state, and quietly flew toward the battlefield, launching a surprise attack at the nearest dozen or so high-ranked divine lords. It was also at this time. Inside the Wind Frost Emperor's divine warship, Yank, who was sitting in a secret chamber, suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a thick look of pleasant surprise. "It's him. Damn little bastard, actually delivered himself to my doorstep. The heavens are really helping me, ha 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 ha." Chapter 3279. After entering Yinan's divine kingdom, Yank had been using his mystic arts to search for Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Lan Er's auras along the way. Even though this was like finding a needle in a haystack. However, he thought that the 300 high-ranked divine lords would definitely cause panic in the great Yan Empire if they went all the way north and slaughtered many soldiers. Experts like Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Lan Er would most likely rush over to help once they heard the news. At the very least, they would come personally to check the situation. After all, the 3 of them were citizens of the great Yan Empire and had some feelings for the great Yan Empire. This way, Yank would have a chance to capture Ji Tianqing and kill Chao Qingyu and Lan Er. However, this was only his plan. He did not have enough confidence to ensure that it would succeed or when it would succeed. And now, the surprise came too suddenly. Yank was completely unprepared and suddenly detected Ji Tianqing's tracks. He was instantly overjoyed. His first reaction was to charge out of the divine warship and personally injure Ji Tianqing, seal him, and capture him. After all, Ji Tianqing knew the secrets of the Yan family like the back of his hand. Yank had to capture him and get to the bottom of this matter. If Ji Tianqing refused to speak, then he would kill Ji Tianqing and refine his soul memories. However, this thought flashed through Yank's mind. He immediately realized what was going on. Ji Tianqing was very strong and comparable to a low-level divine king. He was cunning and skilled in all kinds of mystic arts. It would not be easy to injure and capture him in a short time. Under such circumstances, those 200-plus high divine lords would be put to good use. Thinking of this, Yank hurriedly used his consciousness to send a voice transmission to the Wind Frost Emperor. "Pass down the order. Half of the people will resist the siege of the army. The other half will gradually gather in the northwest direction. In that area, there's a human youth in white robes. We must surround him at all costs." In the Great Hall, the Wind Frost Emperor, who was commanding the battle, immediately replied with a voice transmission, "Understood." Then, he conveyed Yang's instructions to the divine emperors. The battlefield under the night sky quickly changed. The attacks of the 200-plus high divine lords had clearly weakened somewhat. Half of the divine lords continued to cast spells to resist the encirclement of the army and quickly slaughtered the defenders. As for the other half of the divine lords, they quickly rushed towards the northwest while killing the defenders, forming a huge encirclement. These high divine lords all had new missions and goals. It was a human youth in a white robe. No matter the cost, they had to surround him and prevent him from escaping. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing had already started a massacre on the battlefield, sweeping everything in his path. His figure was erratic, like a ghost or a phantom, appearing and disappearing in the sky. Every time his figure flickered, he would release a sword light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, scattering it toward a few dozen high-level divine lords. This incomparably wondrous sword technique bloomed with dazzling five-colored divine light, releasing a destructive might that contained the power of more than 100 divine Tao laws. Any high-level divine lord that was enveloped by the sword light would find it difficult to escape, unable to escape even if they had wings. Those who were lucky enough to avoid death were only heavily injured by the sword light or had their arms or legs severed. Those who were seriously injured had their divine bodies destroyed by the sword light, turning into a bloody mist that filled the air. There were even some unlucky high-level divine lords. Not only were their divine bodies destroyed, their divine cores were also shattered, countless fragments falling to the ground. Ji Tianqing was like an unparalleled sharp blade, freely moving about the battlefield and wantonly slicing apart the enemy's formation. His speed was extremely fast, making it impossible to guard against. His strength was extremely strong, his killing power terrifying. Many high-level divine lords were unable to block him. In a short 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing had killed more than 30 high-level divine lords and injured more than 40. Such a shocking battle record caused the high-level divine lords to tremble in fear. While they were terrified, they were also puzzled. Who is that white-robed brat? A super-fierce general of the great Yan Empire? His strength is so terrifying. Even peak divine lords can't be as strong as him. He's not a great Yan god, but a human. Why is he working for the great Yan Empire? The great Yan Empire only has a few peak divine lords, but that brat is definitely not one of them. Who exactly is he? No wonder His Majesty the Emperor ordered us to surround that fellow with all our strength. If we still don't stop him, our men will all be killed by him. Many high-level divine lords swiftly killed the surrounding guards and increased their speed to shrink the encirclement. As they exclaimed, they were full of doubts, discussing, and asking questions as they executed arts to kill Ji Tianqing. Soon, another 100 breaths of time passed. During this period of time, Ji Tianqing assassinated another 13 high-level divine lords and injured more than 20 people. However, more than 80 high-level divine lords completed the encirclement, shrinking the encirclement to a radius of 250 miles. In this encirclement, only Ji Tianqing remained. All the guards had been killed. The divine senses of more than 80 high-level divine lords locked onto Ji Tianqing as they attacked him with all their might. Swoosh! 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 Dazzling divine light and overwhelming divine art light poured down on Ji Tianqing like a torrential flood. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, his eyes flashing coldly. He was not worried or afraid. Even if those high-level divine lords joined forces to attack him, as long as he used the infinite sky of chaos, he would definitely be able to escape this calamity. However, he sensed that something was amiss and vaguely guessed something. I've killed so many divine lords consecutively, causing them to panic. That's why they joined forces to attack me. This makes sense. However, more than 200 divine lords did not panic. They had a clear division of labor. Half of them will fend off the army while the other half will attack me. This is definitely not an improvisation. Someone must be commanding and making arrangements in advance. Who is it? Within the Wind Frost Empire, who would recognize me and know that I pose a great threat? Moreover, this person has a high status and can command and order 300 high-level divine lords. Ji Tianqing acutely sensed that there was a problem here. The first answer that appeared in his mind was the Wind Frost Emperor. Only the Wind Frost Emperor could command and control 300 high-level divine lords. However, why would the Wind Frost Emperor personally lead an expedition and personally charge into the Great Yan Empire's territory? This did not make sense at all. Thinking up to here, another thought appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. Unless, there's a mastermind behind the Wind Frost Emperor. He vaguely guessed something and released his divine sense to probe the 2 divine ships in the distance. However, those 2 divine ships only had 10-odd high-level divine lord auras. Among them, the strongest ones were merely 2 peak divine lords. The person he guessed was not in the 2 divine ships. Infinite Sky of Chaos. In the next instant, Ji Tianqing used his trump card, his body becoming transparent and blurry. Fortunately, he had been vigilant and prepared beforehand, so his injuries weren't too serious. In addition, the appearance of the mysterious saber light also confirmed his guess, making him even more certain of the answer. Yank! You cowardly scoundrel, get out here for this king. Ji Tianqing exerted his power to suppress his injuries, then flew back up into the night sky and let out a deep roar like a bell. The sound waves were deafening in the night sky. Not only were the several 100,000 soldiers stunned, but the 200+ high divine lords were also very confused. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. Yank? Who's Yank? Both sides had a preliminary understanding of Ji Tianqing. The several 100,000 soldiers of the Southern Yi divine nation thought that he was one of them, a super expert loyal to the Great Yan Empire. With such an expert in charge, the army, which had been in a state of panic before, immediately calmed down and became much more confident. Meanwhile, the 200+ high divine lords of the Wind Frost Empire thought that Ji Tianqing was the Great Yan Empire's guardian, and also the person that the emperor had ordered to surround and suppress. However, no one could understand why he would shout out an unfamiliar name in such an aggressive manner. Just as everyone was puzzled, the Wind Frost Emperor appeared. He flew out of the divine warship and streaked across the night sky as fast as lightning, landing outside the encirclement with awe-inspiring might. At this moment, he was wearing the dark golden dragon armor. His entire body was covered in armor, and only a pair of eyes could be seen from under the helmet. He held the dark golden divine sword in his hand and pointed at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. Human brat, you only have 2 choices now. Either you surrender, or I kill you. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and sneered. Wind Frost Emperor, you're not qualified to be my opponent. I don't care if you consider Yank as your backer or if you've been enslaved by him. Tell him to come out. I'm going to twist his head off. Although he had fought Yank for more than half a month in the battle at the Green Jade Palace, he had been severely injured in the end. However, after recovering from his injuries and returning to his peak state, his strength had also increased a little. Now, he also wanted to fight Yank head-on. He wanted to see how big the gap was between him and Yank, who was in the 4th King God realm. However, Yank had been hiding in the alternate dimension, ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. The Wind Frost Emperor would not let him do as he wished. He decisively waved his hand and gave the order to attack. You lunatic, don't talk nonsense. Everyone, listen up. Kill this bastard with all your might. After saying that, the Wind Frost Emperor took the lead and waved his dark golden divine sword. 9 golden sword lights shot towards Ji Tianqing. More than 80 high-level divine lords also shouted and charged forward without any regard for their own safety. Suddenly, Endless dazzling divine light covered the night sky for tens of thousands of miles. Thousands of divine light rays, carrying the power to destroy everything, poured down on Ji Tianqing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only use all his strength to activate his defensive shield and teleport to avoid most of the divine light rays. However, there were too many of them. They had formed a circle around him. Thousands of divine light rays came from all directions, densely packed like rain. Even if he used all his strength, he could only dodge half of the attacks. However, he was still struck by the divine light that filled the sky. The golden shield that enveloped his body made muffled bangs from the bombardment. Although he had successfully blocked this round of attacks, the golden shield was broken. However, the golden shield was shattered, and he had used up too much of his divine power. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. At the same time, the night sky above his head silently split open a spatial crack. 12 dark golden saber auras that were more than 3,000 meters long slashed down with unparalleled sharpness and power that could cut through everything. The sword lights were extremely fast and were about to hit Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He instantly took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and covered himself. Boom! Boom boom boom! The 12 terrifying sword lights fiercely hit the black light shield of the divine pagoda, creating earth-shattering sounds. The black light shield violently fluctuated, bursting with black light ripples, releasing an ice-cold aura. However, the shield did not shatter. The 12 sword lights were shattered into pieces and scattered in the night sky. Despicable bastard, you've already ambushed me once. Do you want to succeed a second time? Ji Tianqing put away the divine pagoda and held it in his left hand. He stared at the night sky and sneered disdainfully. Yang did not reply, nor did he show himself. He was still hiding in the alternate space, looking for a new opportunity to ambush. Chapter 3281. Ji Tianqing didn't need to break through the encirclement. Being surrounded and attacked by so many high divine lords, he was completely capable of using the heaven-destroying sword formation to seal off the surrounding 10,000 kilometers. As long as he used the sky-destroying sword array, the 200 or so divine lords would suffer heavy casualties. Even Yang's sneak attack wouldn't endanger his life. He would fight Yang after he finished off the Wind Frost Emperor and the other divine lords. But this idea wouldn't work. This was the Yanling mountain range, surrounded by hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Once Ji Tianqing used the sky-destroying sword array, it would cover thousands of miles and kill indiscriminately. Plus, if he fought with Yang and the other divine lords, the shockwaves would also kill many soldiers. The great Yan Empire was already weak and in danger. He was here to help. How could he kill hundreds of thousands of soldiers? Under such circumstances, he could only choose to break through the encirclement. He had to use his strongest power and break through the encirclement as quickly as possible. Sky Dragon Slash. Ji Tianqing chose to charge toward the south. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed out a giant sword. The resplendent golden sword lit up with the image of a divine golden dragon. It descended from the sky and slashed at the several high divine lords. The 10-some high god lords in the surroundings immediately moved to help, joining together to cast a spell to block the attack. Boom! Crack! With a deafening sound, the dragon shadow greatsword slashed down. The 3 high-level divine lords were chopped into pieces on the spot, a bloody mist filling the air. 5 divine lords were sent flying. They were severely injured and had lost limbs. A gap appeared in the encirclement and Ji Tianqing was about to pass through. But the Wind Frost Emperor rushed over and waved his dark golden divine sword, shooting out hundreds of cold beams. Swish! 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 The blinding cold beams carried a sharp power that could pierce through everything and enveloped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing didn't want to be passive, so he waved the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out sword beams to block the Wind Frost Emperor's attack. Ping ping ping. After a series of muffled noises, the cold radiance and the sword radiance collapsed, and countless fragments of divine light splashed out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing used his ultimate technique and attacked the Wind Frost Emperor with all his might. Daylight Sword. The Burial of Heaven sword released a world-destroying sword light. From the initial size of a millstone, it rapidly expanded to a radius of 100 miles, like a dazzling golden sun. The dazzling golden sword light was about to hit the Wind Frost Emperor and the 20 Sir Gods around him. At the critical moment, the more than 20 divine lords, the imperial army governor, and the 18 imperial consecrators all stepped forward to block the attack. They joined hands to cast a technique, erupting with the most powerful power, blasting apart the golden sun and also protecting the Wind Frost Emperor. Of course, these Sir Gods also paid a heavy price. More than 10 people were severely injured by the sword light, and 6 high divine lords had their divine bodies destroyed. Just as Ji Tianqing was about to follow up with another attack, Yang, who was hiding in the dark, attacked again. A crack appeared in the sky, and there was a raging divine fire and an extremely violent blade aura silently poured down. Ji Tianqing could only give up the idea of attacking. He used all his strength to block and neutralize Yang's attack. Although he used his powerful divine power and exquisite divine powers to block Yang's attack, his energy was depleted. However, his strength was being consumed at an extremely fast rate, and his injuries were slowly worsening. He also couldn't find out where Yang was hiding. Soon, he was surrounded by many Sir Gods and was drowned by divine powers. Just like that, Ji Tianqing fought with Yang, the Wind Frost Emperor and the others. As time passed, his energy continued to weaken and his injuries continued to worsen. His white robe was dyed golden by the divine blood. The Wind Frost Emperor and the High Divine Lords were also decreasing in number and the casualties were increasing rapidly. But the ones who suffered the most were the defenders of the Southern Yi Divine Kingdom. The shockwaves from the battle between the powerhouses covered a radius of 30,000 miles, razing the entire area to the ground. There were more than 100,000 defenders in this area, but now they were all killed. Most of the defenders were swept away by the destructive shockwaves. They were directly smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. Under such circumstances, only half of the 600,000 soldiers in the Yanling mountain range were left. Ji Tianqing saw this tragic scene and his face turned grave. His eyes flashed with worry. He had no choice but to speed up the momentum of his attack. He unleashed his strongest power and used his fiercest ultimate technique. Rising Dragon Slash. He roared and held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands. He slashed out a dazzling golden light that was 10,000 feet long. The sword light was like a sun in the sky, illuminating tens of thousands of miles. Kaboom! The giant sword slashed down and killed a dozen high divine lords. Then, the night sky was torn open and a 100-mile-long spatial crack appeared. The encirclement formed by the high divine lords was forcefully broken open. The faces of the Wind Frost Emperor and the others changed drastically, revealing a look of horror. Ji Tianqing took this opportunity to teleport 1,000 miles away and escape the encirclement. Swish! He was like a bolt of lightning that tore open the night sky and fled toward the south. The Wind Frost Emperor and more than 180 high divine lords immediately reacted. They turned south without hesitation and pursued with all their might. As for Yang, who was hiding in the dark, he was one step ahead of them and had already chased after Ji Tianqing. In a short 10 breaths of time, over 100 divine lord powerhouses had disappeared into the horizon in a grandiose fashion. The ruins in a radius of tens of thousands of miles soon quieted down. As the divine light that filled the sky disappeared, the area became dark and gloomy. However, the scene of devastation and the lingering smell of blood in the night sky still made the 200,000 soldiers who were lucky enough to survive fearful. Ji Tianqing fled toward the south, flashing in the night sky and teleporting desperately. In less than an hour, he had fled 800,000 miles away from the Yanling mountain range. Only then did he slow down. After all, he had not reached the Divine King realm and could not teleport for long periods of time. Not only did it consume a lot of divine power, it also caused great damage to his body. At the same time, Yank caught up and revealed himself. Swish! He was 10 feet tall and looked like a small mountain. He appeared in front of Ji Tianqing and blocked Ji Tianqing's path. Kid, there is a path to heaven but you don't take it. There is no door to hell but you barge in. This time, without the help of those two bastards, let's see how you can escape. Yan Ku held the bronze halberd in his hand and stared at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile on his face. Ji Tianqing's white robe was stained with blood and he had used up 40% of his strength. It was difficult for him to use his full combat power. However, he was not afraid. He stared coldly at Yank and said, I was right. You escaped into the Wind Frost Empire and controlled the Wind Frost Emperor. You borrowed the power of the Wind Frost Empire to take revenge. I can see that you do not have confidence and certainty. Tonight, it is not certain who will kill who. His Majesty, our Emperor is really such a once-in-a-blue, how can we miss? Many high divine lords were well aware that the Northern Heaven region's region master was also a divine king powerhouse. But they were above of divine lord of the heavens and basically, of the world. Them. Take the Northern Heaven region ruler for example, he had not shown his face for nearly 10,000 years. Even if the Wind Frost Emperor knelt in front of the Northern Heaven region ruler, no matter how much he fawned and begged, he would not be able to receive guidance and rewards from the Northern Heaven region ruler. After all, the dual identities of Divine King and Northern Heaven region ruler allowed him to stand at the top of the gods, enough to look down on everything. But now, the Wind Frost Emperor had the generous and selfless Yank Divine King. As long as they killed Ji Tianqing, they would receive a generous reward. This was simply a great blessing, for the welfare of all the divine lords present. For a moment, more than 100 high divine lords forgot about their injuries and exhaustion, all of them were in high spirits, their confidence multiplied. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned, secretly cursing Yank for being cunning. This cunning bastard is much smarter than his father. The Wind Frost Emperor is controlled by him, obeying his every word, but those divine lords do not know what is going on. However, he understood the thoughts of those divine lords. With just a few words, he was able to win over the hearts of those divine lords and increase their morale. Ji Tianqing knew that it was impossible to sow discord between Yank and those divine lords. The only thing he could do now was to fight a bloody battle, break through the encirclement, and escape the great Yan Empire as soon as possible. Anyway, the surrounding tens of thousands of miles were mountains and steep ridges, and there was no army of the great Yan Empire. He was not afraid of hurting innocent people, so he could give it a try. He would kill as many as he could, and if he could injure Yank again, it would be a great gain. As for killing Yank and the divine lords, he had thought about it before. But after careful consideration, there was no hope. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble and to prevent any unexpected changes, Yank did not waste any more time. He did not need the Wind Frost Emperor to convey his message. He waved his halberd, pointed at Ji Tianqing, and ordered the divine lords, generals, listen up. Besiege this person with all their might. They must kill him. If anyone can capture him alive, I am willing to take him as my disciple and promise to help him break through to the God King realm. Once he said that, the Wind Frost Emperor and more than 100 Sir Gods were stunned. The next moment, everyone was so excited that their blood was boiling, and their eyes turned red. There was no doubt that Yank's amazing reward had stimulated everyone's nerves. Even the Wind Frost Emperor's blood was boiling, and his breathing was rapid. He was so excited that his hands were shaking. There was no need for Yank to do any pre-battle mobilization. Everyone unleashed their strongest fighting spirit, used their trump cards, and charged at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their lives. Kill! Don't fight with me. I must capture that boy alive. Ha ha ha. I must get him too. Charge! Everyone, together. The chance to change your destiny and rise to the top is here. The originally quiet heaven and earth was suddenly filled with earth-shattering shouts. More than 100 high divine lords attacked from all directions as if they had gone mad. Yank also descended from the sky, holding the bronze halberd with both hands. He charged at Ji Tianqing, releasing a divine aura that could suppress the heaven and earth. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing was surrounded and in a precarious situation. However, he was not afraid. He used his trump card with all his strength, the ultimate move that he had wanted to use for a long time. Heaven-destroying sword formation. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. His left hand formed a seal and pointed diagonally at the ground. His right hand held the sword of burial of heaven and pointed at the sky. In an instant, the gloomy sky became resplendent. Tonight, the moon was bright and the stars were dotted with stars. At this moment, more than 20,000 huge stars appeared in the sky. The dazzling star fell like a meteor, rapidly enlarging in everyone's eyes. In just 2 short breaths, more than 20,000 shooting stars were above everyone's heads. Only then did the Divine Lord see clearly that those were not shooting stars. Instead, they were giant swords that were 3,000 feet long. Each giant sword was shining with divine light and unparalleled sharpness. Not only did they contain more than 100 types of nomological powers, but they also had sword intent that could destroy heaven and earth. Boom! 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 Chapter 3283. Swish! 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 Sharp, ear-piercing sounds rang out in the night sky. In the blink of an eye, more than 20,000 giant divine swords formed a massive sword array that spanned 5,000 miles. This area was sealed off by more than 10,000 giant swords, and space was also sealed. In addition, there were over 10,000 divine giant swords that were wantonly shuttling back and forth between the heaven and earth for 5,000 kilometers, forming a dense and terrifying sword net. More than 100 high-level divine lords were immediately killed by the huge swords that filled the sky. Miserable cries erupted from the field, one after another. Bam! 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 Pft! Ka-cha! With a series of muffled sounds, the high-level divine lords, who were already injured, were dismembered by the sword light and blood rained down. The divine lords came back to their senses. They had no time to marvel at the wonders of the sword array, and they suppressed their fear. They hurriedly used their divine abilities and secret techniques to block the sword array's attack. Swish! 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 All sorts of divine light shields and defensive divine artifacts appeared in the crowd, glowing with rainbow light. The even more dazzling giant divine swords were like bolts of lightning streaking through the night sky, raining down on the crowd. Rumble! A series of muffled sounds rang out incessantly as a series of violent shockwaves surged wantonly within the sword formation. All the divine lords, including the Wind Frost Emperor, had grave expressions, their hearts filled with worry and anxiety. The heaven-destroying sword array released a terrifying divine might that suppressed them, making it difficult for them to move. Their divine power was blocked, and their fighting strength was greatly reduced. They could only block the sword array's attack, and it was very difficult for them to launch an effective counterattack. As a result, the pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced. He stood amidst the sword light and looked at the distant Yank. Seeing Yank condense a golden shield and tenaciously block the giant sword's attack, his lips curled into a cold smile. Yank, the divine lords of the Wind Frost Empire can't even take care of themselves. It's time for us to fight. Come, let this king see how much you've recovered from your injuries. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing swung the burial of heaven and charged forward as fast as lightning. Rising sword. Ji Tianqing seemed to be walking confidently, but his speed was extremely fast, leaving behind a series of afterimages. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and swung it casually, but it drew upon the divine power of heaven and earth and released sword energy that could destroy everything. Even the 20,000 giant swords of the heaven-destroying sword formation released an extremely sharp sword chi. Under his guidance and control, they all charged towards Yank. Swoosh! Swish swish swish! Ji Tianqing had only slashed out once, but thousands of sword lights had appeared around Yank. The sword light was unparalleled in its sharpness. Cracks appeared in the space within a radius of 10 miles around Yank. Seeing this, Yank frowned deeply, and his eyes became even more solemn. That damnable fellow! It's only been 2 or 3 months, and not only has he recovered from his injuries, his strength has even improved. His sword chi could actually tear through space. He was already infinitely close to the Divine King realm. And the combat prowess he unleashed is already the standard of a low-level Divine King. These thoughts flashed across Yank's mind, and he became even more wary and cautious. His bronze armor had been shattered into pieces during the battle in the Green Jade Palace. Now, he could only wear a grayish-brown armor to fight with Ji Tianqing. This armor had a rough and ancient appearance, as if it was made of rocks. In terms of grade and defensive power, it was slightly weaker than the bronze armor, so he could only make do with it. However, Yank used his defensive mystique with all his might and pushed the power of the golden light shield to its maximum. Bang 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 bang. Thousands of sword lights and sword chi slashed the golden light shield one after another, and a series of muffled sounds rang out. The golden light shield trembled continuously, and golden light shards flew out. Soon, cracks appeared on it, and it collapsed. Then, the remaining sword lights and sword chi slashed at the grayish-brown armor. Yank's body trembled from the impact, and dozens of shallow white marks were left on his grayish-brown armor. Without waiting for the sword lights and sword chi to dissipate, Yank took the opportunity to counterattack. He waved his halberd and charged at Ji Tianqing. Earth-shattering blow. Yank roared loudly, and he gripped his halberd tightly with both hands. He used all his strength and concentrated on his most powerful attack. Wherever it passed, hundreds of giant divine swords were destroyed, and sword light shards filled the sky. 100-mile-long crack was torn open in space, revealing a pitch-black void. In just an instant, Yank broke through the obstruction of the sword net and charged at Ji Tianqing. Before the halberd reached him, Ji Tianqing was locked on by a terrifying killing intent from 1,000 feet away. He was suppressed by a violent divine power, and his body started to tremble. However, he was not worried. With a thought, he used the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation to unleash a mystique. Absolute shadows of 10 directions. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At that moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly split into 18 shadows and merged with the sword lights in the sky. This was one of the many mystiques that made him famous when he dominated the god world. It was a top king-level mystique. However, his strength was still low, and he could only use the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation to create 18 shadows and merge them with the heaven-destroying sword formation. If he was at his peak, he could create thousands of shadows at will and merge with the heavens and earth for millions of miles. Regardless of whether he split or merged, he could attack or defend. It was a super mystique that combined defense and assassination. Such a strange scene caused Yan Ke's heart to tremble as he revealed a look of horror. This, he instinctively wanted to cry out in surprise. However, the Wind Frost Emperor and more than 100 high-level divine lords were not far away. If he acted shocked, it would affect the morale of the crowd and damage his authority as a god king. Swoosh! The bronze halberd that was burning with golden divine flames naturally missed its target. Yan Ku rushed forward for 10,000 zhang and destroyed more than 30 giant divine swords before stopping. He held the halberd in front of him and looked around, searching for Ji Tianqing. However, within 5,000 miles of the sword formation, there was no sign of Ji Tianqing. Even his aura had disappeared. It was as if Ji Tianqing had disappeared into thin air apart from the sword formation. However, Yang knew that this was not the case. Ji Tianqing must have merged with the sword formation. Unless he broke the heaven-destroying sword formation, he would not be able to hurt Ji Tianqing. Damn it! Yang cursed and charged to the edge of the sword formation with his halberd. Since Ji Tianqing did not appear, he would attack the sword formation with all his strength. As long as he broke the sword formation, Ji Tianqing would have no choice but to appear. At that time, the Wind Frost Emperor and the other divine lords would be able to help him attack Ji Tianqing. Blue sky, illusory sun. Fierce wind, falling stars. Yang waved his halberd and used all his mystiques to attack the sword formation. Bam! Bam! Chapter 3284. Yang was indeed powerful. After just 7 moves, the sword formation was already on the verge of collapse. At least 100 divine swords were destroyed, and a gap appeared in the sword formation. Seeing this, Yang laughed contemptuously. Ha ha ha. You coward, what's the use of hiding in the sword formation? This king can break this kind of sword formation that can't even withstand a single blow. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd fell silent. Thousands of divine swords suddenly gathered silently in the sword formation behind him, forming 9 heaven-splitting swords that were tens of thousands of feet long. The 9 giant swords had accumulated a terrifying amount of power, and they attacked Yan Ku from different directions without making a sound. However, Yang was already prepared and constantly monitored the movements of the sword formation. He immediately turned around and waved his bronze halberd, sending out hundreds of divine spear shadows to attack the 9 heaven-splitting swords. Boom, boom, boom. There was a deafening explosion as the hundreds of divine spear shadows collapsed and exploded. 8 of the 9 heaven-splitting swords were also destroyed. Only 1 divine giant sword remained and it slashed at Yan Ku. Bam! With a muffled sound, Yang was sent flying backward and crashed heavily into the light wall of the sword formation. When he steadied himself, he looked down and saw that there was a deep dent in the grayish-brown armor on his chest. The armor on his arms had been cut open and blood was gushing out. At this moment, the giant sword that was tens of thousands of feet long glowed with even brighter divine light and released an even more ferocious aura. Whoosh! The giant sword suddenly changed direction and attacked Yang from a different angle with the power of hundreds of divine Tao laws. It was only now that Yan Ku realized that the giant sword was actually Ji Tianqing's incarnation. He had merged with the sword of burial of heaven and absorbed the power of the heaven-destroying sword formation to transform his body into a divine sword. No wonder the giant sword was so powerful. Good. Very good. I have indeed underestimated you. But do you think you can defeat me with this little ability of yours? Naive. Yang was so angry that he started to laugh. He shouted angrily and waved his halberd again to attack the giant sword. Boom! Both sides clashed with all their might, causing a loud explosion. Yang was knocked back. His finger bones were broken, and the bronze halberd in his hand was shaking violently. However, this kind of injury was nothing to him. He could recover in an instant. On the other hand, the enormous sword was blasted into pieces, and it sprayed out fragments of divine light that covered the sky. After the huge sword was shattered, Ji Tianqing's real body was revealed. He flew backward for 100 miles before regaining his balance. Cough cough, he couldn't help but cough twice, his face pale. He raised his sleeve to wipe the blood from his mouth, then wielded the sword of burial of heaven and manipulated the heaven-destroying sword formation to attack Yang. Soon, he and Yank were entangled in a fierce battle again. And at this time, of the 180 high divine lords, only 150 remained. Under the leadership and command of Emperor Feng Shuang, many Sir Gods regained their composure and formed a battle formation. The number of casualties gradually decreased, and everyone steadied their footing. Emperor Feng Shuang led everyone to resist the attacks of the 10,000 swords, and gradually moved to the edge of the sword formation. 15 minutes later, they reached the edge of the sword formation. 100 high divine lords formed a battle formation to resist the attacks of the sword formation. As for Emperor Feng Shuang and the 50 Sir Gods, they attacked the sword formation with all their might, trying to tear open a gap and escape. Boom! Boom boom boom! All kinds of powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills fell on the light wall of the sword formation like raindrops, blasting the sword formation to the point where it was on the verge of collapse. One after another, the giant divine swords were shattered into pieces under the combined attacks of the crowd. The power of the sword formation gradually decreased, and cracks appeared on the formation. It was about to be torn open. On the other side, the battle between Ji Tianqing and Yan Ku was extremely intense, and the battle was extremely intense. Yank was a little anxious. To prevent any accidents from happening, he didn't hold back anymore. He wasn't afraid of being injured. He used all his strength to finish off Ji Tianqing as soon as possible. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianqing couldn't escape, and could only contend with him. Even though he knew that Emperor Feng Shuang and the Sir Gods were about to break through the sword formation, he didn't have the strength to stop them. Time passed. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yank still hadn't decided a winner, and were still fighting fiercely. Ji Tianqing's injuries were getting worse, and his body was covered with wounds. Golden divine blood kept pouring out, dyeing his white robe and hair. Yank also suffered light injuries, and his injuries were getting worse, and his strength was quickly depleting. At the same time, the Feng Shuang Emperor and the 100 over Sir Gods worked together to break the heaven-destroying sword formation. Ka-cha! The dazzling light wall was torn open, and a 10-foot gap was torn open. Swish swish swish! Emperor Feng Shuang and the Sir Gods didn't hesitate to pass through the gap, and escaped from the sword formation. As soon as they left the sword formation and returned to the dark sky, everyone looked as if they had been relieved of a heavy burden. Everyone felt that the terrifying pressure had disappeared, and they felt relaxed, and their divine powers were working normally. After everyone left the sword formation, they quickly formed a battle formation under the command of Emperor Feng Shuang. They arranged themselves in a formation in the night sky and joined forces to release a torrent of divine light that could destroy the heavens and earth, blasting towards the heaven-destroying sword formation. After all, it was only a temporary gap in the sword formation, and it would be repaired soon. Only by completely destroying the sword formation could they eliminate the threat, and help Yank kill Ji Tianqing. Boom! Boom boom boom! The overwhelming divine light torrent, like a flood, poured down on the sword formation that was 5,000 miles wide, and there was a loud explosion that shook the sky. The huge light barrier trembled violently. Layers of ripples spread out, and countless cracks appeared on it. As wave after wave of attacks descended, the sword formation shook more violently, and the cracks extended in all directions, and there was a loud cracking sound. In just a short time, the sword formation couldn't bear the burden, and it shattered and fell apart. Ka-ka-ka, after a series of crisp explosions, the sword array turned into fragments of divine light that filled the sky and dissipated between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing and Yank's figures reappeared in the night sky, and they were still moving and fighting. Many Sir Gods were energized, and they shouted with murderous intent, "Kill! Surround him, we can't let him escape this time. He is already seriously injured, and killing him is as easy as flipping my hand." Soon, Emperor Feng Shuang and more than 100 Sir Gods spread out, and formed a 1,000-mile circle in the night sky. Everyone worked together to cast their divine powers, and attacked Ji Tianqing from all sides. Ji Tianqing was in an even more dangerous situation, and he might be defeated if he couldn't hold on. But at this moment, in the night sky 10,000 miles away in the north, a space crack suddenly appeared, and there was a dazzling white light. Swoosh! The white light illuminated the world, and 3 figures of different heights flew out from the space crack, and they were as fast as lightning. In just a few breaths, the 3 figures arrived near the battlefield, and they stopped. A sacred and majestic aura that enveloped the entire place spread out, sealing off the area within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Emperor Feng Shuang and all the Sur gods suddenly felt the pressure increase, and their hearts were filled with fear and respect. Sword breaking the 9 heavens, sword breaking the 9 heavens. Chapter 3285. With the arrival of the 3 mysterious experts, the Wind Frost Emperor and many Sur gods stopped attacking. Even Ji Tianqing and Yank, who were fighting fiercely, stopped at the same time and turned to look at the 3 experts. When they saw the faces of the 3 powerhouses clearly, their expressions immediately changed. Yank frowned and his expression became extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "Damn bastard. Every time you appear at the critical moment, you ruin my plans." While he was angry, he also felt helpless. Because he knew that he could not kill Ji Tianqing. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's expression was a little surprised. He raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. This couple came at the right time. They even brought strong reinforcements. Without a doubt. Among the 3 experts, there was a man and a woman. They were Chao Qingyu and Lan He. On the other side, the Wind Frost Emperor stared at the 3 experts and carefully looked at the man in the golden robe. After being in a daze for a moment, he suddenly realized something. His expression changed drastically, and his eyes widened, revealing a deep sense of horror. Domain. Domain Lord. Domain Lord. Because of his nervousness and fear, the Wind Frost Emperor's voice was trembling. He only felt that the world was spinning. His eyes darkened and his legs were a little weak. He could not help but kneel down to salute. Because the tall and burly middle-aged man in the golden robe was the Tianbei Domain Lord, who had not shown up for 10,000 years. As early as 10,000 years ago, the Wind Frost Emperor was lucky enough to see the real face of the Tianbei Domain Lord, but only once. In the library of the Wind Frost Empire, there were portraits and statues of the Tianbei Domain Lord. Therefore, when the Wind Frost Emperor saw the Tianbei Domain Lord, he was stunned for a moment. After carefully observing for a while, he dared to confirm his identity. Hearing the Wind Frost Emperor's trembling voice, more than 100 Sur gods were suddenly shocked. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Their faces were filled with panic and shock, and their legs began to tremble. At the same time, the Tianbei Domain Lord was expressionless. He looked at the Wind Frost Emperor majestically and said in a sonorous voice, "Very good. You still recognize this king, and you even know that Tianbei region is this king's territory. I thought that you had sided with this foreign race's god king and wanted to help him seize the position of region lord." The deep and vigorous voice contained a powerful soul-sucking power. The Feng Shuang Emperor and many divine emperors were terrified. Their faces were pale and they were sweating profusely. This subordinate pays his respects to the region lord. Domain Lord, please judge clearly. This subordinate is loyal and devoted to you, and I absolutely have no intention of betraying you. The Wind Frost Emperor could not withstand the pressure of the Northern Heaven region leader. He immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. The Tianbei Protectorate Lord was unmoved. His eyes turned even colder as he asked, "You followed the orders of the foreign race's supreme being and gathered many high-level divine lords to invade the great Yan Empire. You started a war between the 2 empires and destroyed the peace of the Tianbei Protectorate. Is this how loyal you are to me? Subordinate. The Wind Frost Emperor was at a loss for words, not knowing how to explain. After all, this was an established fact. It had happened and could not be refuted. However, he was controlled by Yank and was loyal to Yank. It was even more impossible for him to push the blame to Yank. After a moment of silence, he calmed down and explained seriously, "Please believe me, Domain Lord. This subordinate did not want to start a war between the two empires. This subordinate led a large number of divine lords here just to capture Tianqing. As long as we can capture this person, this subordinate will immediately let all the divine lords return to the Wind Frost Empire. Moreover, this subordinate is willing to be captured and bear the anger of the Domain Lord. I will accept all punishment and sanctions." The Wind Frost Emperor's tone was firm, steady and powerful, showing the domineering and responsibility of an emperor. More than 100 Sir Gods were suddenly in awe and they let out a sigh of relief. Since the Wind Frost Emperor wanted to take the blame alone, they could be exempted from punishment. However, no one knew. This was not the Wind Frost Emperor's intention. In fact, he refused in his heart. He wanted to tell the Northern Heaven Domain Lord that this matter had nothing to do with him. He was also controlled by someone and had no choice. However, Yank used his mind to manipulate him and forced him to say these words. The Northern Heaven Domain Lord showed a trace of surprise. He looked deeply at Yank and said, "Wind Frost Emperor, even if you have some responsibility and show an iron and unyielding appearance, it will not help. The consequences of this matter are extremely bad and the crime is serious. It is not something you can bear alone. What's more, since this king is here, you can only accept the punishment. What qualifications do you have to talk about conditions?" Like a muffled thunder, the sound waves echoed in the night sky, deafening. The Northern Heaven Domain Lord's iron and blood domineering, 10 times stronger than the Wind Frost Emperor, made everyone's heart tremble. At this time, Chao Qingyu also took a step forward and stood side by side with the Northern Heaven Domain Lord. He looked down at the Wind Frost Emperor, shook his head gently and said with a cold look, "Tianqing saved my life. I will not forgive anyone who dares to harm him." After that, he looked at Yank and sneered, "Yank, I did not expect that we would meet again so soon. You controlled the Wind Frost Emperor and led many divine emperors to kill in the Great Yan Empire. Didn't you want to take revenge on us? Now, the three of us are here. Bring it on." When Yank saw the Northern Heaven Domain Lord and Chao Qingyu appear, he knew that it was over. He had no hope of killing Ji Tianqing. While the Northern Heaven Domain Lord was questioning the Wind Frost Emperor, he secretly used the divine ability secret skill of stealing a beam and looking for an opportunity to escape. However, Chao Qingyu noticed it and changed the topic to him in time to attract everyone's attention. On the other side, Ji Tianqing also guessed that Yank would escape. He quietly flew behind him and blocked his way. In this way, Yank was surrounded and could not advance or retreat. He quickly controlled the Wind Frost Emperor and took the opportunity to create chaos and create an opportunity for him to escape. The Wind Frost Emperor was very normal. Suddenly, he became emotional. His eyes were as red as fire and he roared hysterically. "Generals, listen to my order. The Domain Lord will not forgive us. He will kill us all. We can only break out with all our strength to win a chance of survival. Everyone, follow me and break out at all costs." While shouting, the Wind Frost Emperor waved his dark gold sword and madly rushed toward the Northern Heaven Domain Lord and Chao Qingyu and launched an attack. The 100+ High Divine Lords all revealed expressions of incomparable shock and astonishment. All of them were stunned where they stood. No one could believe that the Wind Frost Emperor had attacked the Domain Lord. He seemed to have lost his mind. He was simply tired of living. Most of the divine emperors did not dare to act rashly. Their hearts were in their throats and they were sweating for the Wind Frost Emperor. Chapter 3286. Kill. Charge. The Wind Frost Emperor and more than 30 monarchs shouted as they rushed towards the North Heaven Region Master. Of course, some of them were like moths flying into a flame. Everyone, including the Northern Heaven Region leader, looked at them quietly. In everyone's eyes, they had been sentenced to death. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yan Ku immediately unleashed his strongest power and used the steel beam substitution technique. Swoosh! On the surface, he was still standing in the night sky, looking anxious and dignified, as if he did not know what to do. But in fact, it was just an illusion. His real body had already escaped into an alternate space and was about to run away. Ji Tianxing and Chao Qingyu had been watching Yang's every move. The two of them immediately sensed that something was wrong and acted decisively. They slashed open the dark night sky and tried to kill Yan Ku. At the same time, the Wind Frost Emperor and more than 30 divine emperors rushed to the governor. The governor did not use his divine weapon and did not even try to block them. He was expressionless and looked at the Wind Frost Emperor and the others sternly. Suddenly, he shouted. A group of evil beasts, kneel down. The thunderous roar suddenly exploded in the night sky and shook the earth for tens of thousands of miles. In the invisible sound wave, there was a divine power that could suppress everything and a terrifying power that shrouded the Wind Frost Emperor and the others. Suddenly, the Wind Frost Emperor and more than 30 divine emperors froze in place as if they had been struck by lightning. The divine abilities and consummate skills that everyone had used also collapsed into fragments that filled the sky. Their fighting spirit and killing intent also disappeared in an instant. This was the difference between a divine king and a divine emperor. More than 30 high divine lords were stunned by the Northern Heaven Region Master's cold shout. All of their attacks and fighting spirit collapsed. The faces of those high divine lords were ashen, their bodies trembling like sieves as they involuntarily retreated. The governor looked at the Wind Frost Emperor sternly and shouted, "Evil beast, kneel here and wait for me to punish you." After that, the Northern Heaven Region leader did not look at him anymore and went after Yank. The Wind Frost Emperor looked as if he had lost his parents. He knelt down with a dejected expression. He did not dare to say anything, nor did he dare to act rashly. The high divine lords were the same. They all stood obediently behind the Wind Frost Emperor, their heads drooping. The North Heaven Region Master's power was too deep, and it had long been ingrained in everyone's hearts. Because of this, he was able to make the Wind Frost Emperor and the other Sir Gods obey him with just a few angry shouts. 50,000 li away. The dark night sky was illuminated by a dazzling divine light. Ji Tianxing and Chao Qingyu unleashed their ultimate skills and slashed out dozens of space cracks in the night sky, covering an area of a few thousand miles. The space in this area shattered, bursting out with terrifying energy fluctuations, sweeping up a vast white space storm. Shwa! Yank, who was traveling through the alternate dimension and trying to escape, could only rush out of the spatial storm and appear in the night sky. After all, the space in this area was already distorted. If he insisted on going through this area, he would most likely get lost in the folded space or be injured by the chaotic space fault. Yan Ku, stop being so stubborn. Admit defeat and surrender. Yan Ku, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings tonight. Ji Tianxing and Chao Qingyu both shouted coldly and used their divine powers to attack Yank from both sides. How could Yank give up struggling and resisting? He held the bronze halberd with both hands and used his ultimate skill with all his might. He waved the halberd and covered the sky with spear shadows to protect himself. Bang, bang, bang. The sky was filled with sword radiance and the radiance of divine spells. They shattered the spear shadows that enveloped Yan Ku and sent him flying. Yank held the halberd with both hands and blocked the fatal attack in front of him. Even though his injuries had worsened and blood was flowing out of his mouth and nose. However, he used the powerful impact to speed up and escape to the south, cutting through the night sky as fast as lightning. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he had run 5,000 miles away, putting more distance between himself and Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu. His incomparable desire to survive made him unleash his most powerful potential and run as fast as he could. Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu could not catch up with him in a short time. However, when Yank had run 10,000 miles away, the Tianbei protector caught up with him. Shwa! In the night sky in front of him, a beam of white light suddenly lit up, and a powerful spatial fluctuation burst out. In the white light, the Tianbei protector teleported and raised his fists to hit Yank. Sky-dominating punch. The Tianbei protector shouted angrily. His body was burning with divine flames and the 4 wings on his back were all open. Endless divine power poured out of his fists and condensed into 2 mountain-like fist radiances, which hit Yank. Bang! There was a muffled explosion that resounded through the sky and shook the earth. Without any suspense, Yank was sent flying back and rolled toward Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu. While he was still rolling in the night sky, he let out a painful groan and blood spilled all over his body. After being hit by such a heavy blow, at least a dozen of his divine bones were broken, and his injuries were even more severe. Yan Ke had just neutralized the impact and hadn't even stabilized himself when Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu joined forces to attack again. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Thousand Gods Imperial Worship. Ji Tianqing held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and slashed out a giant sword that was 10,000 feet long with all his might, releasing a divine power that could split the sky and earth. Chao Qingyu formed a divine art with both hands and used a secret technique to release thousands of divine shadows, which attacked Yank fiercely. Yank could only suppress his injuries and block with his halberd. Bang, 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 bang. There was another series of loud noises, and Yank was sent flying again, spitting out blood. The ruler of Tianbei Protectorate took another 5,000 miles and appeared next to him, slapping him fiercely. At the same time, Lan Er also caught up and joined the battle. Shi, Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and the ruler of Tianbei Protectorate joined forces and surrounded Yank in 4 directions. The 4 of them attacked Yank with all their might, and Yank was sent flying in the sky with blood splattering everywhere. Under such circumstances, Yank could barely fight back, let alone run away. His injuries worsened rapidly, and his strength weakened rapidly. Soon, he was covered in wounds and his body was a bloody mess. After about 15 minutes, he was severely injured and unconscious. He was no longer able to fight back. In the end, the ruler of Tianbei Protectorate used a powerful divine power to knock Yank out completely. The result was self-evident. The ruler of Tianbei Protectorate captured Yank and used a sealing technique to seal Yank's divine power and godhead. In this way, Yank was no different from an ordinary person. He was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. The battle stopped, and the night sky was quiet again. The ruler of Tianbei Protectorate carried Yank and flew to Ji Tianqing and Chao Qingyu. They looked at Yank in his hand, and Chao Qingyu asked, "Brother Qin, what are you going to do with Yank?" Chapter 3287. How to deal with Yank was not a problem for the Tianbei Protectorate Lord. He said calmly, "This foreign race's godly king came from another continent and had a blood feud with you. He also wreaked havoc in the Tianbei region. If not for his schemes, the Wind Frost Empire and the Great Yan Empire would not have gone to war, and hundreds of thousands of people would not have been killed. Therefore, I had no choice but to kill him to quell the war between the 2 empires, to comfort the dead people, and to give them an explanation." Chao Qingyu nodded and did not say anything. Lan Er agreed and said solemnly, "Brother Qin, Yank is a middle-level godly king after all. He is powerful and has many tricks up his sleeve. If not for you, we would not have been able to capture him so easily. I also agree that we should kill him to prevent future troubles. Otherwise, he will definitely take revenge and wreak havoc in the entire Tianbei region. The Tianbei Protectorate Lord nodded and said calmly, "This foreign race's godly king came for you. Since you have no demands or plans, I will execute him in front of everyone. I will give the two empires an explanation and deter those restless emperors." After saying that, he turned to leave with Yank. From the beginning to the end, he had never asked for Ji Tianqing's opinion. After all, he was the honorable Protectorate Lord. Other than the Azura God Emperor who ruled the boundless heaven continent, he did not need to care about anyone else's opinion. However, Chao Qingyu and Lan had been good friends with him 20,000 years ago. That was why he treated them differently. Wait. Just as the Tianbei Protectorate Lord was about to leave, Ji Tianqing suddenly spoke. The Tianbei Protectorate Lord turned to look at him, raised his eyebrows, and asked, "Do you have any objections?" His expression was cold, and his tone was calm and proud. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Chao Qingyu quickly explained, "Brother Qin, this is young Master Tianqing that I told you about before. If not for his help, Lan and I would have died. Young Master Tianqing is young, but he is a genius with outstanding talent and outstanding qualifications. He played a huge role in both battles against Yank." Hearing this, the Northern Heaven Domain ruler's expression softened. The coldness and indifference in his eyes gradually disappeared. He looked at Ji Tianqing and nodded slightly. "Since you're also a participant, you can speak your mind." Ji Tianqing said straightforwardly, "I hope you can give Yank to me and let me deal with him." The Tianbei Protector, Chao Qingyu, and Lan were all stunned. The three of them had never thought that Ji Tianqing would actually make such a request. Their expressions were both shocked and astonished. Tianbei region leader frowned and asked, "Give it to you? With your strength and means, I'm afraid you can't deal with him, right? Also, what are you going to do with him?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said indifferently, "Don't worry, Domain Lord. I naturally have a way to control Yank. I won't let him do any more evil. Also, I'll leave Tianbei region as soon as possible. You can rest assured." Hearing this, not only did the Tianbei Protector's expression become more serious, but Chao Qingyu and Lan were also more surprised. "Young Master Tianqing, you mean, you won't kill Yank?" "Young Master Tianqing, why are you doing this? Yank can't be left alive." Since the two of them had spoken, the Tianbei Protector didn't need to say anything more. Ji Tianqing looked at Chao Qingyu and Lan and said, "I won't kill Yank because he's more useful alive. Also, since I dared to do this, I have enough confidence and certainty that I can completely control Yank. Didn't you say before that you wanted to repay my kindness? How about this? Hand Yank over to me as a token of gratitude." In fact, Ji Tianqing really didn't want to kill Yank. In comparison, it was more useful to keep Yank alive to serve him. He had other ideas and plans, but it wasn't convenient for him to reveal them to Chao Qingyu and the others. His tone was firm and his attitude was resolute. In addition, Chao Qingyu and Lan had always been grateful to him and wanted to find an opportunity to repay him. Therefore, the couple looked at each other and accepted Ji Tianqing's request. The two of them looked at the Tianbei Protector with questioning and pleading eyes. The Tianbei Protector frowned and thought for a moment, then said, "You and your wife owe him a favor. Since he wants to use Yank to offset it, I can fulfill his wish. However, I must see with my own eyes that he can truly control Yank and leave Tianbei region." After that, he threw Yank in front of Ji Tianqing. The Tianbei Protector didn't have any deep hatred for Yank, so he didn't have to kill him. He only did this to maintain the peace of Tianbei region. The three of them gathered their gazes on Ji Tianqing. Everyone wanted to see how Ji Tianqing could control Yank. After all, Yank was a real medium divine king. The so-called control wasn't as simple as sealing Yanku's power like what he was doing now. It was like how Yank controlled the Emperor of Wind and Frost, turning him into a puppet that obeyed all orders. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time and didn't want to waste any more time talking nonsense. In front of the Tianbei protector, Chao Qingyu, and Lan Er, he began to use his divine power secret skill. He waved his hands with a solemn expression and formed a divine art, drawing out mysterious divine light and activating his lifetime's power. Swoosh! 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 Mighty divine power, carrying the power of more than 100 divine Tao laws, gushed out from his fingertips. Thousands of strands of divine light interweaved and folded in front of him, shuttling back and forth and condensing into mysterious divine seals. One after another, exquisite divine seals were formed and stacked on top of each other. In the beginning, the Tianbei protector was still indifferent and had a scrutinizing attitude. After watching for a while, he saw the secret behind it and his pupils shrank, his expression becoming much more solemn. After watching Ji Tianqing for a quarter of an hour, his eyes became more focused and his expression became shocked and astonished. This was because Ji Tianqing's divine power used 300 divine Tao laws and condensed thousands of divine seals. Even the Tianbei protector had never seen such a miraculous technique. At the same time, he also saw that although Ji Tianqing wasn't a divine king, he had mastered 300 divine Tao laws. This was simply unheard of, an unbelievable miracle. Previously, Chao Qingyu and Lan had told him that Ji Tianqing was the most monstrous genius they had ever seen in their lives. Now that the Tianbei protector saw it with his own eyes, he deeply agreed. Unknowingly, 15 minutes passed. Millions of divine lights condensed into a golden sword in front of Ji Tianqing. The finger-sized golden sword light flashed with divine and dazzling light. Ji Tianqing activated the small golden sword and pierced Yang's forehead, into his godhead, and into his divine soul. The entire process was very smooth and didn't encounter any obstacles. The Tianbei protector, Chao Qingyu, and Lan watched the entire process with their divine senses and were immediately in awe and astonishment. You are indeed the most monstrous genius I have ever seen in my life. The Northern Heaven region ruler, who had always been arrogant and aloof, actually praised a young divine emperor to his face. This was the first time this had happened. Chao Qingyu and Lan knew his character well. They found it unbelievable and their eyes were full of splendor. The Northern Heaven region governor did not say anything more. His eyes fell on Chao Qingyu and Lan Er. He said, "When this is over, let's leave Yang to Tianqing. We should go back. That bastard Emperor Feng Shuang is still waiting for me to deal with him." However, Chao Qingyu and Lan shook their heads. "Brother Qin, you can deal with this matter. We won't interfere. Also, we have something to say to young Master Tianqing." The Northern Heaven region governor seemed to have guessed something. He took a deep look at the two of them and nodded slightly. "All right, then I'll leave first. You guys, take care." After that, the Northern Heaven region governor waved his hand and broke the night sky. He stepped into the space crack and disappeared. After he left, Ji Tianqing looked at Chao Qingyu and Lan, and asked the question in his heart. "Tonight, I passed by the Yanling mountain range and saw a powerhouse slaughtering the Yinan divine nation's guards, so I decided to help." He didn't expect to meet the Wind Frost Emperor and Yang here. It was all Yang's doing. However, didn't you all leave the Cloud Sea secret realm to find someone to treat your injuries? Why are you here? And with the Tianbei region master? Could it be that the person you're talking about is? Chao Qingyu nodded with a smile and explained, "That's right. We were talking about Brother Qin when we said that we were looking for someone to heal us. As early as 20,000 years ago, we were good friends. He is a god king. He is the only one who can help us heal our injuries quickly." Lan nodded in agreement and explained, "Yesterday evening, we were in the Domain Lord's divine palace and he used his arts to heal our injuries." Suddenly, the emperor of the Great Yan Empire sent an emergency message to the territorial lord for help and briefly explained the situation. And NB friends, please prompt, pay attention to the rest of your eyes after reading for a long time. 00 Recommended reading, SP. The Tianbei region has been peaceful for nearly 10,000 years, and the territorial lord has never appeared. This time, the Wind Frost Empire sent a large number of powerhouses to attack the Great Yan Empire and instigate a war between the two empires. Of course, the territorial lord was furious and decided to take action personally to stop the war from happening. We were also present at that time, so we naturally followed the territorial lord to help him quell the war. We didn't expect to see you and Yank fighting as soon as we arrived at the Yenling mountain range. What a coincidence. After listening to Lan Er's explanation, Ji Tianxing came to a realization. I see. No wonder the Tianbei region master, who hasn't shown his face for 10,000 years, suddenly appeared. You all followed him. I didn't expect that it was Yan Yongning who sent the message for help. In that case, I have to thank him. After understanding the whole story, Ji Tianxing looked at Chao Qingyu and Lan Er and asked, I see that your injuries are only about 90% healed and haven't fully recovered. I won't take up any more of your time. Let's part ways here. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Chao Qingyu waved his hand and explained, Young Master Tianxing, please wait. Brother Qin has already performed a spell to heal us and gave us a divine pill. Our injuries are about 90% healed, and the remaining chronic diseases are not a big problem for the time being. Chao Qingyu's meaning was very clear. They had already troubled the Tianbei region master, so they couldn't go to his palace to continue recuperating. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, Where are you going if you don't meet up with the Tianbei region master? Lan Er pointed at him and said with a smile, Of course we're going to follow you and escort you away. Follow me? Escort me? Ji Tianxing was startled. He was rather surprised. Chao Qingyu nodded and said, Yes. Although you've used a spell to control Yank, he's still unconscious and hasn't woken up yet. Moreover, this guy has always been crafty and extremely difficult to deal with. We're all very worried. If Yank wakes up and gets rid of your control, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to deal with him alone. Lan Er also opened her mouth and said, Young Master Tianxing, didn't you say before that you want to leave the boundless heaven continent and see the outside world? From the Tianbei region to the southernmost part of the continent, the journey is long and there are many variables. The sea outside the boundless heaven continent is even more dangerous and unpredictable. It's difficult to move an inch. Qingyu has nearly 10,000 years of travel experience. I can definitely help you. Chapter 3289. Ji Tianxing did not expect Chao Qingyu and Lan Er to have such an idea. Although they said they were escorting him, they were actually following him. As for how long, they did not say. But it was definitely a very, very long time. In his mind, every godly king was an overlord. They were very proud and could not be inferior to others. Moreover, Chao Qingyu and Lan Er were husband and wife. Their relationship was so deep that it touched the heavens. They wanted to be a celestial couple and live in seclusion without being disturbed. Under such circumstances, it was even more impossible for them to follow him. But now, they took the initiative to mention this idea. Ji Tianxing could not help but frown and ask, Are you too serious? Chao Qingyu quickly nodded and said solemnly, Of course we are serious. We have thought about it for a long time. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought to himself, I just took control of Yan Ku and it hasn't even been 15 minutes. The two of you didn't even discuss it. How can this be considered deliberate? He vaguely guessed something and asked straightforwardly, Do you think that two tigers cannot live on one mountain? That Tianbei region can only have one godly king and one region lord. Now that both of you are godly kings and your whereabouts have been leaked, the experts of Tianbei region know about it. If you continue to stay in Tianbei region, it will affect the region lord's power and prestige. But he is your friend, and he even helped you treat your injuries. You don't want him to be estranged, so you decided to leave Tianbei region. This. Chao Qingyu was at a loss for words. He did not know how to explain. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and said, as expected, we can't hide anything from Master Tianqing. What you said is indeed part of the reason. But the most important reason is that we are indebted to you. We cannot watch you put yourself in danger. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, this is also part of the reason, but not the whole reason. You have other thoughts and plans, right? Chao Qingyu hesitated, not knowing how to answer. On the other hand, Lan Er was silent for a moment. Then, she plucked up her courage and said straightforwardly, young Master Tianqing, you are an extremely intelligent person. We can't hide it from you, but we never thought of hiding it from you. Yes, we do have other ideas. After all the twists and turns and tribulations, we all deeply understood one thing. We must have enough strength and means to protect and take care of the most important people. Only then can we stay together and never be separated. If we were powerful enough 10,000 years ago, we would have been able to cure my illness. Then I wouldn't have to stay in the darkness and suffer for 10,000 years. Qingyu wouldn't have to leave me and travel across the ocean, risking her life to travel the world. Ji Tianqing felt the same way about this. The husband and wife indeed held their breaths and concentrated as they looked at him without blinking, waiting for him to give an answer. Whether they agreed or not, it was up to Ji Tianqing's thoughts. After a moment, Ji Tianqing then revealed a smile and continued, your sincerity, I've seen it. Your suggestion, I accept. Furthermore, the both of you will thank yourselves in the future for making the wisest choice. Although this sentence now sounded a little arrogant and overly confident. But who was he? The Kenshin who once stood at the peak of the divine Tao and awed the world. He was absolutely qualified to say this. Chao Qingyu and Lan Er were stunned for a moment, then immediately revealed a look of great joy as they hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed to thank him. Young Master Tianqing is indeed broad-minded. Many thanks to young Master for granting our wish. In the future, we will be the friends and companions most worthy of your trust. The scene in front of him looked a little absurd and puzzling. It was clearly two God-King powerhouses who proposed to escort Ji Tianqing, to follow and protect him. The one who should be happy and joyful was him, and the one who should be bowing and thanking was also him. But the result was the complete opposite. He agreed to Chao Qingyu's request, but it made Chao Qingyu and Lan Er overjoyed as they heaved a sigh of relief as if relieved of a heavy burden. Those who did not know the inside story would definitely not believe this scene. Having recruited the two new God Kings as companions, Ji Tianqing was also in a great mood. He picked up the unconscious Yank and said to Chao Qingyu and Lan Er, all right, this matter is settled. Before we leave, the both of you can go and say goodbye to the region master. After all, leaving the North Heaven region this time, who knows when we will return. Chapter 3290. Logically speaking, Chao Qingyu and his wife were friends with the Tianbei domain ruler. They were about to leave the Tianbei domain, so they naturally had to say goodbye to the domain ruler. However, Chao Qingyu shook his head and smiled. No need. Actually, we've already said goodbye. Ji Tianqing suddenly remembered that before the Tianbei domain ruler left, he took a deep look at Chao Qingyu and his wife and said, take care. Obviously. The Tianbei domain ruler had guessed their thoughts and expected them to leave. It was just that everyone knew and didn't point it out. Ji Tianqing nodded. That's good. Let's go. After speaking, he carried the unconscious Yank and flew across the night sky toward the south. Chao Qingyu and Lan Er looked at each other and hurriedly followed Ji Tianqing. They hurried on their way. Not long after, the long night ended. The sky was finally bright. A new day had arrived. Seeing the rising sun, Chao Qingyu and Lan Er were filled with relief and anticipation. After flying for a while, Ji Tianqing stopped and took out Xue Lin's divine ship. Swoosh! A fierce black divine ship appeared in the sky. Ji Tianqing looked at Chao Qingyu and Lan Er and said, "Let's hurry on the divine ship. At least we can rest and recuperate." It was true that he had been heavily injured after fighting with Yan Ku for such a long time. He didn't want to waste time healing. The best choice was to hurry on the divine ship and recuperate on the divine ship. Chao Qingyu raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "That's a good idea. I happen to have a divine ship. Its speed and defense are passable, let me drive the divine ship. You can rest and recuperate." After speaking, Chao Qingyu opened his right hand and a dark green divine ship appeared in his palm. With a thought, the palm-sized divine battleship expanded rapidly, turning into a majestic battleship that was thousands of feet long. The divine ship's appearance was majestic and dignified. It was covered in a dark green divine light and emitted a powerful aura. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that this was the king-level divine ship that Chao Qingyu had personally made. In terms of flying speed, defense, and power, it was far superior to Xue Lin's divine ship. Moreover, Chao Qingyu's divine ship was more exquisite and its internal structure must be more logical. In addition, he had set up many king-grade divine formations. Recuperating and healing in the divine warship would be much easier. Thus, he put away Xue Lin's divine ship and nodded in agreement to Chao Qingyu's suggestion. Chao Qingyu opened the cabin door of the divine vessel, and the three of them entered the divine vessel one after another. Just as Ji Tianqing had expected, the internal structure of the divine ship was even more precise and logical. Every room and secret room had a king-level divine formation. Being in the divine ship was like being in a paradise. The entire space was filled with rich divine power. Cultivating and recuperating in the divine ship was like staying in the Green Jade Palace. In the middle of the divine ship was a spacious and bright hall. Standing in the middle of the hall, Chao Qingyu introduced to Ji Tianqing, "Sir Tianqing, the rooms in front of the hall are storage rooms for cultivation resources and weapons. There are also cabins for controlling the divine ship. There are more than 20 secret rooms in the back of the hall. They are all used for cultivation and recuperation. In each room, there are small amounts of divine stones, elixirs, and other resources. You can choose any secret room and go into seclusion to recuperate. In addition, there is a secret room that I have made into a prison. There are many sealing divine formations in it. When you are recuperating, you can leave Yank in there to prevent any accidents." As he spoke, Chao Qingyu used his divine telekinesis to activate the formation. He controlled the divine ship to fly south. Whoosh! The divine ship was like a ray of green light. It streaked across the sky as fast as lightning and traveled thousands of miles in an instant. After Chao Qingyu introduced the divine ship, he wanted Ji Tianqing to recuperate. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "From now on, we will travel together. We are trustworthy companions. There are some things that I have to tell you first. Actually, I am not traveling alone. Long before I met you, I had many companions following me. My family has also been following me all this time. Let's take this opportunity to meet and get to know each other. It will be easier to work together in the future." Chao Qingyu and Lan Er were surprised. They quickly nodded and said, "That's great. It is only right that we greet each other and get to know each other." Ji Tianqing took out Xue Lin's divine ship and used his divine telekinesis to wake everyone up. Soon, Xue Lin, Blood Illusion God, Gold Left Emissary, Blood Dragon Right Emissary, Nia Feiyun, and the others appeared in the hall. Everyone had just finished cultivating. When they heard Ji Tianqing's call, they quickly showed themselves. In the end, they found themselves in an even more exquisite divine ship. In front of them, apart from Ji Tianqing, there was also a middle-aged couple with powerful and mysterious auras. Everyone was stunned for a moment, sizing up Chao Qingyu couple with curiosity. Ji Tianqing opened his mouth and introduced, "Everyone, these two are Divine King Azure Jade and Divine King Yulan. They are also my friends. From now on, everyone will travel together. We must unite, trust, and help each other. Of course, the two of them are divine kings. If you have any questions or difficulties in cultivation, you can also consult them." Hearing these few sentences, Xue Lin, Nye Feiyun, and the rest were stunned, revealing extremely shocked expressions. For a moment, the hall was silent. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Perilous waves surged in their hearts. My God! Divine King experts. And there are even two of them. Two unbelievable. Divine King experts that have always existed in legends, we actually saw them with our own eyes. This Divine King couple is actually young master's friends. They also want to follow by young master's side. Too horrifying. Even unparalleled Divine King experts want to follow young master Tianqing. I really wonder who on earth young master is. Everyone was exclaiming and shouting in their hearts, becoming more and more reverent and admiring of Ji Tianqing. Very soon, everyone stabilized their emotions and greeted Chao Qingyu couple enthusiastically. Chao Qingyu couple did not put on the airs of Divine King experts either. They did not appear arrogant in the slightest, returning everyone's greetings with a very amiable attitude. After a series of introductions and small talk, everyone was considered to have gotten to know each other. Following that, Ji Tianqing used divine sense voice transmission to wake up his family in the 9 heavens 10 absolute pagoda. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, White Dragon, and Zhen Hong appeared one after another. Only Ji Tianqing did not wake Ji Wushuang up because she was at a critical juncture of cultivation. The four of them appeared in the hall. Ji Tianqing introduced them to each other, and everyone was considered to have gotten to know each other. After learning that Yun Yao and Ji Ku were Ji Tianqing's wives, that White Dragon was his disciple, and that Zhen Hong was his maidservant, Chao Qingyu couple's attitude changed a little. They were obviously much closer. Everyone saw this scene and became more and more shocked. They only felt that it was inconceivable. After all, Chao Qingyu couple took the initiative to express goodwill to Yun Yao and Ji Ku. It was a kind of fawning and getting closer to Ji Tianqing. Everyone could not help but wonder how mysterious and powerful Ji Tianqing was to make two divine kings take the initiative to curry favor with him. Sword piercing the 9 heavens, sword piercing the 9 heavens. Chapter 3291. Although Lin Xue, left emissary Jin, and the others admired Ji Tianqing greatly. They also knew that Ji Tianqing was a once-in-a-lifetime genius and that he had supernatural powers that were comparable to the godly kings. However, they did not expect that even godly kings like Chao Qingyu and Lan would have to swallow their pride and follow Ji Tianqing. This was simply unbelievable. They had followed Ji Tianqing for so long and were very familiar with Ji Tianqing. However, they suddenly realized that they could not see through Ji Tianqing at all. After exchanging some pleasantries, both parties went about their own business. Lan chose a secret room and went into seclusion to cultivate and heal her injuries. Chao Qingyu went to the cockpit of the divine warship and adjusted her breathing as she steered the divine warship. As for Lin Xue, Xue Huan, left emissary Jin, and the others, they each chose a secret room and continued to cultivate. Only Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Long, and Zhen Hong were left in the main hall. Zhen Hong did not think that there was anything wrong with this. However, he looked at Ji Tianqing with even more admiration. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Bai Long, on the other hand, had strange expressions on their faces. They all sent telepathic messages to Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, how did you subdue these two godly kings? Big brother Tianqing, these are two bona fide godly kings. Why would they lower themselves and choose to follow you? Could it be that they know your true identity? Master, did you expose your true identity? The three of them were Ji Tianqing's closest and most trusted people. They all knew Ji Tianqing's true identity. Therefore, when they saw Chao Qingyu and Lan Er following Ji Tianqing, their first reaction was that Chao Qingyu and Lan knew that Ji Tianqing was Kenshin's reincarnation. In response to their questions, Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to transmit his voice to them. Chao Qingyu and Lan Er's story is a little complicated. I'll tell you more about it later. The reason why they trusted me was because I had saved their lives and helped them a lot. Also, Chao Qingyu once tested me and mentioned something that happened 1,000 years ago. I met him back then, fought him and even gave him some pointers. He probably had some suspicions but could not be sure. Therefore, they were willing to escort me out of the boundless heaven continent. Hearing this, the three of them understood the reason. At the same time, they didn't need to ask how Chao Qingyu had tested him. They could guess that Ji Tianqing definitely didn't admit to it. After all, a divine king powerhouse over 1,000 years ago became a divine lord now. Who knew what kind of storm such a strange thing would cause? After a moment of silence, Yunyao asked again, Tianqing, having two divine king powerhouses willing to follow you is naturally a good thing. In the future, when we travel the divine realm, we'll have an extra helping hand. At an appropriate time, you can also give them some pointers and guide them. But you can't trust them too much. Don't have the heart to harm others, but don't be without the heart to guard against others. Ji Ku also felt the same. Nodding repeatedly, he advised, Big brother Tianqing, you haven't been in contact with them for long. You might not really understand them. It's better to be on guard. Although White Dragon also had this idea, the two madams had already said it, so he did not elaborate. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a slight smile, you all don't have to worry. I still have the ability to judge people. Moreover, even if they have disloyalty someday in the future and want to harm me, they won't succeed. I'm already at the peak of the Divine Lord realm. It won't be long before I break through to the Divine King realm. Also, other than the two of them, I have a mid-level Divine King with me. This mid-level Divine King is loyal to me. He will never betray me. After saying that, he took out the Jyotian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and took out the unconscious Yank from the 3rd floor. Yank, who was 10 feet tall, looked like a rock giant. He suddenly appeared in the hall, lying on the ground in a sleeping posture. He occupied half of the hall. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and White Dragon were stunned. They looked at Yank in surprise. Tianqing, who is this rock monster? Did you make him into a puppet? This big guy is a mid-level divine king. He's even stronger than the couple. Master, you're just a mid-level divine king. How did you subdue a mid-level divine king? Are you trying to defy the heavens? The three of them were shocked. They found it unbelievable. Ji Tianqing explained to them, it's a long story. I have to start with Chao Qingyu and his wife, then, he told them about Lan Er turning into a monster and how Chao Qingyu left the boundless heaven continent to search for the antidote. After half a quarter of an hour, Yunyao, Ji Ku and the other two finally understood the whole story. When they looked at Yank again, their expressions were a little complicated. There was also some sympathy and pity in their eyes. If that's the case, this Yank is really unlucky. The Wind Thunder Soul Cleansing Elixir that he worked so hard to get was stolen by Chao Qingyu. He chased after Chao Qingyu for many years and crossed the sea to Tianbei region. Unfortunately, he met you. Now, not only did he fail to get the elixir back, but he was also severely injured and had his divine soul controlled by you. Big brother Tianqing, this guy is a mid-level divine king. You have to be careful. If he removes the apocalyptic sword chi that you planted in him in the future, he'll definitely take revenge on you. Master is still master. With the strength of a peak divine lord, you can actually control a mid-level divine king. You're more than 10 times more awesome than you were back then. After hearing what the three of them said, Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Don't worry. Since I can control Yank, I have absolute confidence that he won't be able to escape. From now on, he's my most loyal guard. Now, our forces can be considered very strong. With 3 divine kings protecting us, it's enough to roam the divine realm. Don't worry, go back to the divine pagoda and cultivate in peace. I still have to wake Yank up and let him treat his injuries as soon as possible." Indeed, the unconscious Yank was severely injured and his strength was also incomparably weak. Without decades of treatment and recuperation, it would be very difficult for him to recover. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and White Dragon didn't stay any longer. After bidding farewell to Ji Tianqing, they all entered the distorted spacetime of the divine pagoda and went into seclusion to cultivate. With 3 divine kings protecting Ji Tianqing, they didn't have to worry about Ji Tianqing's safety. They could also cultivate in peace for a long time. Of course. Before returning to the divine pagoda, Yun Yao hesitated for a moment and said with a complicated tone, "Tianqing, after you recover to the divine king realm, if there's a suitable opportunity, I still want to go to the dragon realm and find Wuhan as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing knew that Yun Yao had always been very strong. Even though she rarely mentioned Wuhan in these years. But Wuhan's whereabouts were still unknown. This was the biggest pain in her heart. Although she didn't say it, the guilt and longing in her heart had been tormenting her, causing her to often be secretly hurt. Now that Ji Tianqing was about to break through to the divine king realm, the plan to find Wuhan could finally be put on the agenda. Ji Tianqing understood Yun Yao's thoughts and hurriedly comforted her, "Yao Yao, I've been planning to do this for a long time. But we'll have to wait until we reach the reincarnation island to know whether it will work or not." Chapter 3292. Ji Tianqing only had a general direction for the future, but he didn't have a specific plan. He could only take one step at a time and make a decision based on the situation in the future. After Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the White Dragon returned to the divine pagoda for seclusion, he carried Yank into a secret chamber. This secret chamber was chosen by Chao Qingyu. It was the most luxurious and exquisite among the more than 20 secret chambers in the divine battleship. The secret chamber was very big, about 100 square meters in radius. There were many divine arrays and divine power was abundant. There were also countless divine elixirs and divine stones in the secret compartments of the walls. There were more than 1,000 king-level divine elixirs of various types. These were all made by Chao Qingyu when he was traveling in the divine realm. He wasn't too upset when the Green Jade Palace was destroyed because there weren't many treasures in it. All his belongings were in the infinite space ring and the divine battleship. Ji Tianqing stood in the secret chamber and threw Yank in the middle of the array. He waved his hand and sent a beam of divine white light into his body. Soon, Yank's divine power was replenished and he recovered some of his strength and spirit. He finally woke up from his deep sleep and slowly opened his eyes. The secret chamber was dimly lit. Yank looked around with blurred eyes and sat up with his arms supporting his body. As soon as he looked up, he saw Ji Tianqing not far in front of him looking at him calmly. He stood up instinctively and shouted with murderous intent, "Bastard! I'm going to kill you." Yank cursed angrily. He ignored his injuries and was about to take out the bronze halberd to kill Ji Tianqing. However, he tried 3 times and the bronze halberd didn't respond. It didn't appear. How can this be? Where is my heaven-shaking halberd? Yank was puzzled. He frowned and looked around for the halberd. Ji Tianqing stretched out his right hand and a divine light flashed in his palm. The bronze halberd appeared. Are you looking for this? Yank was stunned for a moment. His eyes fell on the bronze halberd, and he snatched it without hesitation. Damn it, return the halberd to me. As he roared, Yank pounced over with a ferocious expression. Ji Tianqing stood where he was and shouted coldly with a dignified expression, "Kneel. You're courting death." Yank was so angry that he cursed subconsciously. However, something strange happened. He really wanted to snatch the halberd and tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. However, his divine soul and body refused to listen to him. For some reason, he stopped walking, kneeled down on one knee, and lowered his head. They looked like the guards under Ji Tianqing's command, bowing to him and listening to his instructions and orders. This. Yank was dumbfounded. His eyes were wide open, revealing a look of horror. How could this be? My will can't control my divine body and divine power. He immediately reacted. He glared at Ji Tianqing and roared, "Tianqing! You bastard, what did you do to me?" Ji Tianqing held the bronze halberd and said with a smile, "Yank, you're a smart man. You should understand your current situation." "That's right. I used a little trick to control your divine soul. Although you don't look strange, you're not much different from a puppet. From now on, you're my most loyal servant and guard. Don't even think about resisting or running away. You should know that I only need to think about it, and no matter where you run, your godhead will explode and you will die." Although Ji Tianqing was smiling, in Yank's eyes, he was more terrifying than a demon. He was shocked and angry. He was so angry that he trembled and his back was covered in cold sweat. "You damn bastard, you're just a divine emperor. How could you control me?" Yank couldn't accept this fact. He hurriedly cast a spell to check the godhead. However, he checked the godhead inside and out 10 times and found nothing unusual. This made him even more shocked and desperate. He couldn't even find anything unusual. How could he get rid of Ji Tianqing's control? It was too desperate. Ji Tianqing frowned and was a little unhappy. He said in a dignified tone, "Don't do things more than 3 times. You should call me Master or Supreme One. If you call me Supreme One again, I'll let you stab yourself 10 times. Yank was so humiliated that he went berserk. He was so angry that he almost lost his mind. He stared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes and roared hysterically, "Bastard! You despicable and shameless bastard! I'm a noble medium divine king, the dignified Tianchuan territory ruler. Even if I die, I will never surrender to you, let alone be your servant. Kill this king and give this king a quick death." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. He threw the bronze halberd in front of him and said indifferently, "You've challenged my bottom line again and again. You should be punished severely. You'll be punished 30 times. Take effect immediately." As soon as he said this, Yank laughed crazily and cursed with grief and indignation, "You're so funny. How can I hurt myself?" Before he finished speaking, his body loyally carried out the order. He picked up the bronze halberd and stabbed his chest and abdomen. Puff! Puff! One stab after another, steady and powerful, piercing into the bone. Blood splattered, and muffled sounds kept coming out. Yank was completely stunned. He even forgot about the pain and didn't even scream. After a while, the 30 stabs were finished. His chest and abdomen were badly mutilated and full of bloody holes, like a sieve. His injuries, which were already terrible, became even more terrifying. His god body was on the verge of collapsing. Blood kept coming out of Yank's mouth. He murmured in a daze, "Is this still my divine body? I can't even control my own body with my own will. Why? Why are you doing this to me?" The heart-wrenching pain finally woke him up and forced him to face reality. Although he still had an independent and sober consciousness. He was indeed controlled by Ji Tianqing and became a puppet that obeyed his every command. Such a heavy blow was unprecedented for him. Not only did it humiliate him to the extreme, but the pride in his heart also collapsed. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect to be reduced to such a state. I'd rather die than be manipulated by you. Yang was desperate. He sneered with grief and indignation. He raised his hand and was about to smash his head and commit suicide on the spot. However, his divine body didn't listen to him at all. His hands were hanging by his side, and he didn't have any intention to raise them. Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, "Don't be delusional. Now that you've fallen into my hands, your life is mine. Your life is no longer up to you. Even suicide is wishful thinking. You can only accept the arrangement of fate and serve me faithfully. Only then can you live and have the hope of regaining your freedom." Regaining my freedom? Yang was stunned for a moment. He frowned and sneered, "How can you remove the control and let me regain my freedom?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Of course not now. As for the future, it depends on your performance." Chapter 3293. Yang was silent. If he could live, he wouldn't want to die. Even if he had to live a humiliating life, at least there was hope for him to regain his freedom and escape from Ji Tianqing's control. He gradually calmed down, thinking and weighing the pros and cons in his heart. I can't believe this bastard's words. He has already controlled me. How can he remove the control? For now, I can only obey and treat my injuries first. After I recover and regain my strength, I'll think of a way to remove the control. I might be able to escape. Thinking of this, Yang's eyes regained some color, and there was a glimmer of hope in his heart. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing gloomily. He said angrily, "I hope you keep your word." Without a doubt, Yang chose to compromise with Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, 10 breaths ago, you were still saying that you would never submit to this king even if you were to die, much less become this king's servant. Just a moment ago, he was unyielding and would rather die than submit. In the blink of an eye, he submitted to Ji Tianqing and decided to endure the humiliation and wait for an opportunity. It was like slapping himself in the face. However, Ji Tianqing had to say it out loud and repeat it in front of him. Yang was instantly humiliated and angry. His whole body trembled, and blood spurted out of his mouth and nose. You're too. Pfft. After the lesson of stabbing himself 30 times, Yang had learned his lesson. Even if he was about to explode in anger and vomit blood from humiliation, he endured it and didn't curse. After all, his injuries were almost at their limit. If he stabbed himself 30 more times, his body would be completely destroyed. In order to live, I'll endure it. Ji Tianqing revealed a mocking smile when he saw that Chu Li was forcefully suppressing his anger. He continued, your attitude has changed so quickly. You're really good at enduring humiliation and bearing a heavy burden. Don't think I don't know that you're planning to endure the humiliation and secretly oppose me. Heal your injuries first, and find an opportunity to escape my control in the future. As long as you escape from this king's control, you will definitely take revenge 10 times, no, 100 times, and tear this king to shreds. These were Yang's true thoughts. When he heard Ji Tianqing say it, he quickly shook his head and denied it. Ji Tianqing restrained his smile and snorted coldly, humph. You're a middle divine king, the domain lord of Tianchuan domain. How could you not have the courage to admit your true thoughts? Yang was silent for a moment before he nodded. He gritted his teeth and said, so what? You humiliated and tortured me like this. Don't tell me that I shouldn't do the same. Ji Tianqing was immediately enraged. He sneered and said, good. You really do harbor evil intentions and intend to disobey master. You deserve to die. Cut the crap and stab yourself another 30 times. As soon as he finished speaking, Yank clenched the bronze halberd with both hands and lifted it up obediently. He was about to stab himself again. Yank was completely speechless. He was so ashamed that he wanted to die. When he didn't admit it, Ji Tianqing said that he had no courage. When he admitted it, Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to punish him. Do you want me to live or not? Was there any justice in this world? In his extreme grief and indignation, Yan Ku could no longer bear this blow. His vision turned black and he fainted. Plop, with a muffled sound, Yank fell to the ground, and the bronze halberd also fell beside him. Ji Tianqing's expression returned to normal. He whispered to himself, "Boy, you still want to play tricks with me? If I don't make you obedient, I'll be sorry to your father." After that, he waved his hand and shot out a thick divine light, which wrapped Yank's body. The dark green divine light had a powerful healing effect. The bloody hole in Yank's chest and abdomen soon stopped bleeding and began to heal. Next, Ji Tianqing activated the divine array in the secret chamber and cast a spell to heal Yank's injuries. After all, he only wanted to teach Yank a lesson and make Yank realize the truth and dispel any unrealistic thoughts. If he really destroyed Yank's divine body, it would take a long time for it to recover. In the short term, Yank wouldn't be able to protect and serve him. Time passed quietly. After 5 whole days, Ji Tianqing stopped casting the spell. At this time, Yank's divine body had been mostly healed by the divine array. At least, his external injuries were basically healed and he didn't look as miserable as before. Yank woke up again. After waking up this time, his emotions were more stable and he was obviously calmer. "Tianqing, I admit defeat for falling into your hands. Although you're not as strong as Chao Qingyu, you're 10 times more terrifying than him." Yank stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a low and solemn voice, "I understand. My life is in your hands now. You've only spared my life because I'm still useful to you. Since that's the case, I won't make any more pointless struggles or resistance. Why do you know the secrets of my race and know our secret arts like the back of your hand? If you can tell me the reason, I'll be completely convinced and loyally assist you. You can release me only when you're satisfied with my performance. How about it?" Yank's anger and resentment dissipated and he calmly negotiated with Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was quite satisfied and nodded slightly. "Well, you're not too stupid. You've finally gotten to the point. I can promise you that as long as your performance is good enough, I can answer your questions. Not only that, depending on my mood in the future, I might even give you pointers and help you reach a higher level." Isn't the Yen clan bound by bloodline shackles and destined to be unable to break through to high-level God King? This isn't a problem for me at all. As long as I'm willing, I can help you become a high-level God King in the future. As the saying went, only by combining kindness and severity would it be effective. Previously, it was coercion. Now, he threw out temptation. How could Yank not be moved? He deeply felt that although Ji Tianqing wasn't a God King, he was stronger and knew more than a God King. With Ji Tianqing's knowledge and methods, he was indeed qualified to give him pointers. As for whether he could help him break through the bloodline shackles and become a high-level God King, Yank wouldn't comment for now. But he believed that since Ji Tianqing was so confident, there was great hope. Good. With your talent and aptitude, you'll become a God King very soon. Sooner or later, you'll become a famous mid-level God King or even a high-level God King. I'll believe you this once. Yank said in a solemn tone. The negotiation ended. The agreement had been reached. Ji Tianqing revealed a satisfied smile and said, "Since that's the case, there's nothing more to say. Let's go. I'll bring you to a place to recuperate in peace." After saying that, he took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and suspended it in the secret chamber. Then, he brought Yank into the distorted space of the divine pagoda and flew to the bottom of the blood flame sacred tree. Only then did Yank realize that Ji Tianqing wasn't alone. He had family and friends with him. If it were anyone else, they might have evil intentions and find a chance to kidnap Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Ji Wushuang in exchange for their freedom. But Yank knew that that was the stupidest thing to do. Ji Tianqing wouldn't be threatened at all. He could kill him with a thought. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.